All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne.
I'm Dalton Gray. Should we leave this in there?
Oh,
we can.
my
I don't
gosh.
care. I can't see James not liking this. He doesn't like unsmooth intros. I was away from the mic. I forgot I had anything to say.
Forgot to introduce yourself.
I
Wow.
did.
So it's
well,
just-
I'm here. This is Brian Humphreys.
If you guys could see the way he dove across the room.
He was halfway to the windowsill to put his Red Bull can next to the other stack of Red Bull cans.
Yeah, we're
And-
getting quite the, what would you even call that these days?
It's the wall of Red
It's
Bull.
the wall of Red Bulls.
It's the
Yeah.
Red Bull window.
It was a stack of Red Bulls at one point, and then it's growing. So
Yeah. The entire bottom row is filled up now.
This show is brought to you by Red Bull. Not like actually, but if it wasn't for Red Bull, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
not brought to you by Red Bull, but
Yeah.
sustained by Red Bull.
Yes. Yeah. That's a better
Exactly.
term for it. Yeah. I wish we could have had that on video.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
Well,
one of these days. One of these days.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Minnesota.
Well, thanks for tuning back into the show. This one's going to be a little interesting. We've got several different topics to hit because we had some scheduling changes last minute and kind of, took us by surprise. So we've got some things here we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some bullets. We're going to talk about some safety, possibly. So,
yeah.
and for any new listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. Dalton, you were just out of state. You went outside.
In the great outside.
The great outside. I don't know how great it is.
It's-
I like it inside.
It's only my
personally,
second time outside of Alaska in the last decade.
but- Really?
Yeah. I went to
That's
Ohio
impressive.
to visit family the last October
Mm-hmm.
and made it a little over a year without going again. But this last weekend, yeah, well, I guess by the time this airs, it'll be about a week and a half ago now. My dad and I traveled out of state to a church wild game supper that we got invited to that has like a couple of booths there for outdoorsmen, and the NRA had a little booth there, I believe it was, and they invited me down to give a little speaking presentation for the podcast and the show. And I had a little booth set up there with some Yukon River knives and some Stealthy equipment and some 60-inch club game bags. And it was very well received and had a lot of folks showed up. I think it was north of 500 attendees at that event. So I got to meet a lot of new people, and people seem to really like those Yukon River knives, man. There's something about those knives.
They're nice knives.
Actually ran into believe it or not, all the way down in Virginia. There were a couple of folks that knew about the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
like, I listened to that podcast.
You don't have to say believe it or not.
I mean, that seems very far removed from Alaska.
It
I mean,
is.
believe it or not, you could go across the ocean and find people
But yeah,
who know about
there-
the show
there was a
based on the
couple of-
emails we've gotten.
Yeah.
There was a couple of listeners that traveled in from Wyoming, I believe it was,
Mhm.
and some young gents from the out west there, and they came in, and then a few folks from around the Virginia area that were listeners. So yeah, it was good to meet a lot of new folks and share some stories about Alaska. And bring some new folks into the fold. So
Yeah,
if this is your first time listening, or you're, just a couple episodes in, we appreciate it and hope you enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you decide to go back and listen from the beginning, it's going to be a long train. I got to tell you.
I did my best to try to forewarn people. I said, the quality really went up at about episode 30 something when we got audio polished up, and
I think it was it was probably the early 20s. I'd say.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I had a few people recently be like, "Yeah, man, I went and listened to your show. I started at episode 1." And I'm like, and he goes, "And your audio is really good."
Yeah.
Well, just
keep, a little later.
Just keep
hang
waiting.
in there.
It gets much better.
We had some issues at the very beginning for anybody that hasn't listened that far back, with some echo.
Yeah.
And Mo did a wonderful job of managing it as best he could.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't think I can go back and listen to anything before number 10.
No.
Honestly.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. We were still just young fellers trying to navigate the podcast land. And we're still trying to get better.
Oh yeah. Always improving.
But yeah, thanks for all the support and all the good feedback that you guys had down there. That was a lot of fun to get to meet a lot of new people and hopefully do more events like that here going forward.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And for you guys, if you do like what you're hearing, if you could, please give us subscribe to the show however you can on whatever platform you're listening to us on. It really helps out our show.
Yeah.
Leaving a rating or review really goes a long way in helping spread this show out to new listeners.
5-star reviews, baby.
5-star reviews and that goes a long way. And we do a lot of Q&As. If you go back and look at all the other episodes, we do a lot of Q&A stuff. We love it when people contact us, and a couple different ways you can do that. Through the website, we have a contact button if you go to thenorthernhunter.com, and you can also reach out to our socials. If you search at The Northern Hunter on any of the meta social media platforms, you'll find us. But as a beginner topic for today, we were going to kind of cover an email we got. This is actually like the second or third one he sent in, which is awesome. And we appreciate when people write in, especially if they have more questions. Always feel free to write in again.
Yeah.
We will never think you're for trying to reach out to us. That's the whole reason we're here. So, but Steven wrote into the show, and he had some questions about loading hammer bullets. Now, Steven's written in a couple times since basically before we did that first episode about reloading, and showed a lot of interest in what equipment he needed and things like that. And so we've been kind of going back and forth. I think Mo, you've responded to him once or twice.
Probably.
But he wrote in asking about bullet weights.
Yeah.
Is light and faster better or heavier and slower?
Mm-hmm.
In his particular case, he's hunting whitetails within 250 yards and asked a very specific question. I sent him my answer, which, by the way, Steven, if you're listening to this, I got to say, I wrote that response on a desktop, and it did not look nearly as intimidating as it did when I saw it again on mobile.
Different when you got a big screen, right?
Yeah, it was like 1 or 2 paragraphs, just a little thing, and then not too bad, 2 lines each, and then some data that I'd worked up and whatnot. I looked at it on mobile, and I was like, my goodness.
Yeah.
I did not mean to write you a book, and I apologize, but hopefully it answered your question. But we decided it was a good enough topic. We've touched on this in passing in previous episodes, but I figured we would touch on it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So the topic of lighter and faster bullets versus heavier and slower bullets is something that I feel has been tossed around a lot over the generations, even from cartridge development, rifle development, and things like that. It
swings back and forth.
Yeah, you look at twist rates in rifles and how they've evolved from being optimized for lighter bullets to now getting tighter twist rates optimized for heavier bullets. That's kind of the way the trend's going. And a lot of that has to do with the development of modern bullets.
Yeah.
But among modern bullets is hammer bullets, one of our sponsors. And for anybody listening, if you would like to try your hand at reloading some hammer bullets, if you use the discount code The Northern Hunter at checkout, you'll actually get 10% off your order. So if you want to save a little bit of coin trying to reload some hammer bullets, they're phenomenal. We recommend them, and it's a great way to do it. But
very easy to load for.
Very, very easy to load.
Very easy.
Very. The only difficult part is that there's not direct data for hammer bullets. There's a lot of good resources for hammer bullets. They have their hammer time forum on their website. There's a lot of people talking on other forums about how to reload for hammers, and how to cross compare. We even talked a lot about that, how to look at other reloading data and compare it. So if you go back and listen to our reloading episode, we did break that down.
Yeah.
But hammer bullets, really, I mean, one of the things that's amazing about them is just they seem to be accurate almost no matter what.
Yeah. It's very easy to just use SAMI spec overall length and just load an appropriate, probably middle of the road load for your starting one, as long as you're not using an absolute hammer. So like their shock hammers and their hammer hunters, you can usually start with conventional load data for other monometal bullets like the Barnes or the Hornady GMX, now the CX. And so if you use any reloading manual, say for instance, you have a load that uses from 42 on the low end for grains of powder up to 47 grains. You start middle of the road, 44 and a half or 45 grains and shoot there and then see what your velocity is and then just work up from there. That's usually pretty safe. For less experienced, I would start a little bit lower. But it's usually pretty safe to just go SAMI spec overall length, start middle of the road and just shoot from there. And you are hard pressed as long as you do your job and maintain consistency with your reloading. It's very easy to get good accuracy right off the bat.
Right. That's been the number one thing about them, really. And it's kind of funny because I've noticed I think they had like a open comment section or something like that on their forum about that.
Right. From what I've seen, it's almost to the point you can pick your velocity. Very to exactly what you want to be, as long as you don't, overpressure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically the answer I gave Steven in my response to his email here was with hammer bullets, the greatest thing about them is they give you all the data, or not the greatest thing about them, but one of the greatest things about the developers of hammer bullets is they give you a lot of the data you need to toy around before you start really wasting precious resources on experimentation. You go to their website and every single bullet that's listed there has its length. It has, it's G7 BC. It has everything you could want right there on one page. There's no searching around. There's no going to other websites and other sources trying to find information about. And so part of that with his question, was find the one that's set up for your rifle. In his instance, and we'll get a little bit more into the heavy versus light here in a second. In his instance, he was talking about two bullets that were very close in weight. And that's the first thing we'll touch on is I believe he was looking at a 218 grain versus a 225 grain. That's really not going to make a huge difference on your retained weight and your muzzle velocities and things like that. You're really going to see those differences come through at about 20 grains. When you're looking at the difference between a 180 grain bullet, let's say for 30 caliber, right? A 180 grain to a 200 grain or a 200 grain to a 220 grain. You're going to start seeing those differences come out a lot more. But if you're only doing 5 grains different, less than 10 grains different, you will see some changes in trajectory a little bit, some changes in speed, but it's not going to be drastic enough to really make a decision based on the weight alone. You want to look at, the length of the bullet, how is it set up for your twist rate in your rifle, which one's going to shoot more accurately, and things like that. And as performance on game goes, my advice to him was that with a lot of the modern bullets, especially in my opinion, including hammers, I prefer heavier and slower. Now, I even put that in the email here, within reason, because there is a within reason, obviously, for whatever you're trying to hunt. And a lot of that has to do with retained weight after expansion, or in hammer's case, the shedding of the front pedals. You get more retained weight with a heavier bullet, which is going to penetrate deeper because it's going to have more momentum behind the bullet withheld. You're also going to typically create less meat damage because of the lower velocity doesn't ripple effect quite as much around the impact point.
All right.
Yeah.
And I gave him an example of keeping your muzzle velocity around or below 3,000 feet per second is what I would say is a good like middle ground. That's where you're gonna be able to reach out and touch some things, but if you do hit something up close, you're not likely to destroy everything, right?
Yeah.
But I figured in the spirit of bringing this, to the public, we like talking about emails we get so that everybody can hear the answer. What do you guys think?
Well, so just before we get off into our opinions, if you do go to hammerbullets.com, you can go to their load data section and they have a bunch of different cartridges listed there. You can find some load data. And Steve at Hammer does try to keep up with more load data as they shoot and test and as customers give them feedback of honest field results that they can trust and verify. For some load data to have on their website. So if you go to the load data section on hammerbullets.com, there is some there. If you're looking for those more niche cartridges, there's probably not going to be very much, if any, there. Some of these rounds, there is no load data listed for it yet.
Yeah.
If you click on any given cartridge, let's just say for 300 short Magnum, there's let's see, two.
I didn't know they had this part of the website here yet.
Yeah.
This is new.
There's 6 or 7 different Excel spreadsheets, it looks like, for load data there. So that is a tool that if you can find a cartridge with load data on there, that's great. If you can't, then you can also just reach out to them on the phone or via email and ask them for load data. Well, and see if they have any that they just haven't published yet,
right?
Which is probably the case. Steve there is really helpful. I've spoken with Steve the most there, and he's always very helpful. Even with cartridges that don't have any published data yet, chances are he knows something about it and someone that's shot it, and he can at least give you a ballpark and a powder and kind of a starting point to go from. So. That's just for folks that...
Well, and in the Hammer Time forum, too. If you go into that forum, they have several different sections there for sharing reload data.
Yes.
And so that's not a book. That's not a Sammy Spec book,
completely
right?
unofficial.
That has, start points and end points and whatnot. But you can go into their forum, hit the little search tab and search for your cartridge, and maybe somebody's uploaded some load data that worked for them. Obviously, be careful with that. But, it's a resource.
Yeah. Start light, work up, be safe.
Exactly.
So anyway, I kind of had a little bit of something to say there about specifically that listener. So he was talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, 6.5.
Yes.
Was he shooting Creedmoor or PRC?
Creedmoor.
Okay, Creedmoor. Yeah.
Yep.
And so for his particular use case situation, I did go through and read your email response to that, and for all intents and purposes. The 2 bullet weights that he was asking about, it's really kind of a moot point.
Right.
Either one is going to perform pretty much close to the other. It's not enough of a weight difference to make any difference on terminal performance at those ranges and on those animals. The difference that you're going to see with bullet weight, number one is at greater distances, there's greater variation. And the more drastic the difference in weight is where you get your velocity change. Obviously, that probably goes unsaid. With hammer bullets, I feel that average weight, or possibly even a little bit lighter than average weight, lends better performance on game. Just because of how they're designed to expand in the animal. Faster you push a hammer, the more dramatic of a result you're going to see. We talked about that a couple weeks ago in reference to our recent deer hunting trip to Southeast.
Right.
With Mariah's 300 short mag. He's shooting a 168 grain HHT hammer bullet at 3150.
31 plus, depending on temperature.
Yeah. And so for that, the 300 short mag is easily capable of shooting 180s and 200 grain bullets.
Yeah.
180 is probably the middle of the road for most conventional 30 calibers, whether it's the 06 or the 300 Win Mag. pick your caliber. And 30 cal, 180 has been the staple bullet weight for a long, long time.
It has.
Especially for out west and up here in Alaska. For deer hunting, you're probably going to see a lot more of the 150s and the 165s.
Yeah.
But for western big game hunting and Alaska, 180s and even a little bit higher is more of your average, but with 180s being the middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
But the hammers, because they are designed to enter and then immediately shed those petals.
Yeah.
That process of extremely fast expansion, which then shears off the petals and then drives that flat-nosed shank deeper into the animal, sending the petals off in their own directions.
Mm-hmm.
That process is best suited for high velocity. The higher velocity, the better result and the more consistent result you're going to get. When you get a hammer bullet that slows down a lot more at greater distances, you're going to have more of a performance that will be closer to what you'd see on like a Barnes bullet. If you shoot a hammer a little bit slower than you're supposed to out at extreme ranges, those petals aren't going to come off.
Are you talking like below 1,800 feet per second?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Below minimum performance requirements, we'll say it that way. They're not going to shed those petals.
No.
So,
have you seen what they look like when they do that?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a guy that was testing them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they mushroom just like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've also seen some people that say, well, that means you can shoot them below advertised
I know.
minimum velocity because then you're just shooting the Barnes at extreme range.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, yes and no, but by the time it gets to be that velocity, there's not really enough juice behind it to drive it deep enough necessarily, unless you're shooting thin-skinned game.
Well, I would say that depends on two things. One would be what you're shooting it with.
Yeah.
You know, because if you're shooting a bigger bullet,
Yeah.
you know, you're still going to have some oomph behind that, even if you're below 1,800 feet per second.
Yes.
Not that I'm recommending shooting these below
Right.
1,800
Right.
feet per second.
Yeah, that's not what we're trying to say.
The recommended. This is all theory right here. But the other thing is, you know, weight retention too.
Yeah.
You know, the more weight retention you can get, the more it's going to basically hold once you're inside the animal.
Yes. So
which again would come down to what you're shooting it with, right? Like,
exactly.
Like it's going to be very different if you're shooting
Exactly.
A 308 versus a 22, or you know, a 375 versus a 270.
Right. Let's give this example. Last year, I shot that 338 RPM for a lot of different hunts, and I opted to go with a 205 grain bullet from Hammer. That shock hammer. I think it was called a power hammer. I heard that they were going to rebrand all those to the shock hammers. Either way, when I got them, they were power hammers. At any rate, 205 grain bullet. Out of a 338, normally your average bullet weight is 225.
Right. Yeah.
The heavies being 250s and the lights being 180s, which are very few and far between.
Yeah.
Barnes makes a 185 TTSX. Hornady makes a 180 grain CX. Used to be the GMX. And you could buy those from factory offerings from Hornady, but the Barnes were hand load only for the 185s. So Weatherby loads the 185 TTSX and then a variety of 225 grain bullets. The 225s being like the happy medium.
Yeah.
You have velocity of around 2,700 feet per second, very similar to like a 338 Win Mag, a very traditional round that we're all familiar with. I opted to go with the 205 because of two reasons. Number one was bullet performance. Steve and I talked a lot on the phone when I was getting that rifle. And I asked him, I said, so for brown bears, moose, potentially some deer, that there are going to be a variety of animals that I want to shoot with this gun. And I'd like to just have one load that I can just load up and shoot this bullet all year.
Yeah.
Same hand load. I don't have to mess with it. And I was thinking of being somewhere in that 220 grain range. Well, this is where the second part of it comes in for my choice. Barrel length. I've got an 18-inch barrel on my 338 RPM. Had I had a 24-inch barrel, I would have been able to get those 225s up to around that 2,700, 28 plus probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But anyway, so
with Yeah.
Yeah.
With a little bit of pep in their step.
Right. Exactly. It's a Weatherby, and I can probably push it a little bit, possibly a little bit above average. But without going off on that whole topic, I opted to go with the 205s on Steve's recommendation because I could jack the velocity way up, which then gives you better terminal performance.
Yes. Yeah.
While I could shoot 225 grain hammers out of that 18-inch barrel, my average velocity with the Nosler AccuBond factory loads, with being 225 grain weight, was 2690. Now,
out of the 18-inch barrel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that enough to do plenty of damage on an animal and kill it? Absolutely. But that's a different bullet. That bullet is not designed to do the same thing. That bullet does not require extreme velocity to perform. As a matter of fact, the Nosler AccuBond is only guaranteed at the 3,200 feet per second.
That's a fact.
If you push it past 3,200 feet per second, that thing is going to come apart.
Turns into an AccuBomb.
I like that. That's very good. So opting for the 205 would give me increased velocity, and which would translate into increased terminal performance.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is one great thing about hammers is there's no top end.
That's where I'm getting with this whole thing. There's a reason why Weatherby and Hammer are the perfect match to load bullets for Weatherby cartridges, because Weatherby has always been built around speed. Now, their last two latest cartridge releases with the 6.5 RPM and the 338 RPM are more of the way that the ballistics world is going right now, which is slightly more moderate velocities, still Magnum performance, still above average velocities for what they are, but in a more efficient case, a little bit less powder, a little bit less of a fire breather compared to in years past, like the 338, 378, or the 30, 378, or the 6.5, 300.
Yeah,
those are
mega overbores.
Right. A lot of overbore, shorter barrel life, and just honestly, probably too much for what your average Joe is going to do, which is where I'm getting with my perspective of this. I'm not generally going to shoot past 400 yards.
Right.
400 is where I would like to be at a minimum. In an extreme case, in a very few, very small number of situations, I would shoot 500-600 yards.
Yeah.
That's a very small percentage of what I'd be comfortable doing. And only if I'd ever shot that gun and that load at that distance on steel to verify the performance and my dope ahead of time. So from my perspective, 400 yards and under with hammer bullets, I would prefer to be at either average weight class or under that.
Yeah.
So that I can have a little higher velocity, a little more Magnum velocity, if you will, which is then going to give better terminal performance.
Yeah.
In my mind, if you have somebody that wants to shoot long range with hammer bullets, then yes, you have to shoot a little bit heavier bullet, because otherwise it won't have the juice to get that far and still have enough velocity to perform, period.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're the guy like me that only wants to shoot out to 400 or 450 yards, then going lighter for better terminal performance overall is going to benefit you.
Yeah.
In my opinion. That's just where I stand on it. That's what I've shot out of that 338. And I've shot black-tailed deer, black bears, brown bears, and moose with it last year. And it worked great.
Yeah.
I never felt like that bullet was too light for the job, for how it was designed.
And arguably speaking, there's a point in weight where enough is enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And 205 grains is well above that.
Yeah.
So even though it's a light for caliber,
right,
it is still plenty of weight.
Yeah.
To penetrate an animal, get through the vitals, get through everything it needs to get through in order to create that, permanent wound channel.
Yeah. Yep.
Of a depth that's going to be significant.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you're saying with the average weight class typically being adequate at that.
Yeah.
And arguably a better middle ground for what it is. I'm not saying everybody should go out and shoot a 300 grain bullet by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
That's way more than you need in most cases, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you're shooting coasties, then maybe
Yeah.
you'd want to.
Coastal brown bears.
Coasties.
Coasties is a slang term for the Coast Guard. That's not what we're
Is it
talking
really?
about. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Coasties is a nickname for the Coast Guard.
Don't shoot. They're our friends.
That's not what we're talking about.
No, coastal brown bear.
Yeah, coastal.
That-
yeah.
Say that Coast Guard thing might kind of link back up in the next part of the podcast.
Oh, maybe.
With
Yeah,
safety.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Possibly. A little foreshadowing there.
Yeah. Nice
Yeah.
foreshadowing, Mariah.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So on that, then I think I've said enough on that. But
I think you have.
Well, I was going to finish up saying, in his
just
case,
kidding.
I was going to say 118 grains is very light for a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
That cartridge was designed for the heavier bullets.
Yeah.
And actually, I even sent him the data for the 139 shock hammer.
Yeah.
Which is the heaviest version that hammer offers right now
in 6.5.
in 6.5.
Okay.
And which is actually smaller than what that bullet was originally released with.
Mm.
And even that, I mean, the thing is, I mean, when you look at what it's intended to do,
yeah,
right, that's where this all comes into.
Mm-hmm.
Is, are you ever going to be shooting long range?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, you're probably fine with like you said, a lighter bullet that's going to hit a little bit harder at closer ranges.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get less drop at that point too. Your point blank range is going to be close, or it's going to be extended a little bit more. You're not going to have to worry about any kind of adjustments.
Yeah.
Or very minimal adjustments, I should say.
You're not going to have to dial nearly as much.
Yeah.
If you're shooting 400 yards and under.
Right.
But,
right.
Yeah. I think, and I didn't verify this, but I think that the lightest 6.5 Creedmoor factory offering might be that 120 grain Barnes TTSX load. That might be one of the lowest weights that you can get for a factory 6.5 Creedmoor load.
I'm sure there's guys pushing real light bullets really fast. I mean,
sure.
Everybody does it because they can.
Just like everybody does. Yeah.
I also wanted to point out too, what you were talking about with the weight and momentum carrying out to long ranges.
Yeah.
That is also case by case.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at your cartridge, your bullet, your speed.
Yeah.
Because I'll just reference the data I'd sent him. Regarding the 118 grain HHTs is what he was looking at, the 125 grain HHTs versus the 139 grain shock hammers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, the shock hammers are not a long range designed bullet. Their BCs are lower.
Yeah.
But the difference was almost 200 yards as far as when they hit terminal velocity.
Oh, really?
Or breached below.
Yeah.
So, and that's with, I mean, the HHTs can hit 1,700 feet per second and expand properly. So, I mean, that does give it a little bit of benefit there. But, even at 250 yards, the difference was only 120 feet per second between the two. 150 on one of them.
Mm-hmm. Nothing a white-tailed deer is going to notice.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Really, any three of these will do fine on a deer at 250 yards. So.
Absolutely.
So my perspective on this comes a lot from my 300 short mag, which is a pretty standard, 308 all-around caliber, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I have a 30-30 that I shoot the 120 grain lever hammers with, that I've got up to around 3,800 feet per second.
3,800 feet per second?
No, I realized I messed that up since I said it. 2,800 feet per second.
I was going to say, holy
I'll tell you
smokes.
what mixed me up on that was I was looking at the hammer's load data on here for the 300 Wisdom Winchester short mag, and they actually show the 120 lever hammer at about 3,750.
Somebody shot that?
It looks like they've got like 7 different powders for it.
No
different
kidding.
load information.
What?
Oh yeah. Start and
whoa.
max fill. Yeah.
That is a smoking round.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now what?
That is cool.
Now hammers are going to be very subject to the way any bullet is, but the way the bullet's designed. So the reason I shoot the 168 HHT for my Wisdom is because I have a Tikka, and a little bit older Tikka with a 1-11 twist.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hammer actually has a 163 HHT, but I believe has a little better BC, but it has to be a 1 in 10 and a half or faster or something like that.
It's a little bit longer.
Or 1 in 10. Yeah, it's actually, so it can actually move a little faster than I think the 168 can. They advertise it up to 3250 depending on your powder,
Nice.
which is fast. They also say that the 182 HHT and a 1 in 10 or faster can reach 32.
Wow.
Which is for a 180 grain bullet out of a 300.
Yeah.
Which is really, really, so I really like the 300 Wisdom as a kind of a medium.
Mm-hmm.
It's a faster, but still in that medium 30 caliber range. So, you could you really actually have to get up there and wait to slow down.
Oh, yeah.
They've got a 214. They say you should still get 3,000 at.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's screaming.
And actually, I'm faster on my 30-30 than their fastest load with the 120 lever hammer. Although I'm using a different powder than they have listed, which is probably why.
Yeah.
Anyhow, all that being said, the looking at this, like I could still stay very fast, the heavy bullet, if my twist rate allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, like you mentioned, James, your twist rate has a lot to do with your bullet selection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
But one thing that's good, especially if you have a more modern cartridge, which Wisdom is a newer cartridge, but not as new as a lot of these newer ones developed for, heavier bullets.
Yeah.
If you can shoot the heavier bullets to get range, if you just want to have one load for everything, for when you're at the gun range shooting for fun, banging steel, and when you're deer hunting, that's kind of what my load is.
Yeah.
That's usually what I shoot for too.
It's that middle ground load. It's got the best performance overall for hunting and for long range shooting. It's going to be, if North Korea invaded tomorrow, I'd be set up, right? With that round. Now, if I was loaded with 214s, I would not be able to dial anywhere near as far.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'd be a lot of Kentucky windage on.
Well, yeah, I mean.
But hey, it's not as big of a risk when it's not a game animal, right?
Just keep sending them.
Anyhow, so there's a lot of things to think about with velocities. There's a good friend of ours we've had on this podcast a few times who likes to say, I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not a numbers guy in the same way that he is, but when it comes to this data, I consume it like crazy. Whenever I'm interested in a bullet or a load, or I find out about another product or powder, I've mentioned that I own a lot of reloading manuals. And whenever I'm thinking about a cartridge or I have
7
interest,
to date?
8.
8. Nice.
And there will be more. They're expensive, so I kind of got to slow.
They
So,
are.
yeah, I bought a whole bunch at once, but yeah. Anyway, don't tell my wife.
Too late.
Anyway, so I'll just nerd out on that cartridge at least for a few hours, right?
Yeah.
If not a few days, just looking everything I'll think about and be like, I'm looking up different kinds of bullets, what people are doing with it. If there's something I'm really, really interested in, I'll just consistently, as I think about stuff, look it up, looking at velocities and just kind of some kind of logging data in averages in my head for what I'll be able to do with something when I'm ready to use it. And the biggest thing is looking at something like my short mag is if I wanted to shoot a heavier, say, shock hammer. For one, my twist rate is a little slow for that. But if I did want to shoot a heavier shock hammer, for that max 200 yards, absolutely, because I'm shooting, and even though it's a little unstable, that's not that big of a deal at a close range.
Right.
But I can still get a lot of speed out of it. Anyway, this is what I want to come down to is at high speeds, there's a high probability of doing a lot more meat damage, even with a hammer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hammers will perform the way they're designed down to 1,800 feet per second, HHTs down to 1,700.
Yeah.
Granted, a hammer is designed to do a maximum amount of kill power at high speeds.
Yes.
Yeah.
That doe I shot at 120 yards or whatever I thought it was.
Yeah.
I got shot at.
Yeah.
She didn't twitch.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just down as fast as, I saw hair and feet.
Yeah.
I love when that's the case.
I know. Yeah, it was a great feeling, right? Because you run up, you're in that kind of a situation. You run up on the beach, you're on the tripod, boom, animals down, like ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
And
didn't go 20.
Exactly. Especially, both hunts this year and last year. Before I got to shoot, I watched people miss animals.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so, it's a great feeling when it's your turn to shoot and you don't miss.
Yeah. Par for the course.
But anyhow, I feel like I kind of went in circles there. But, your speed while I am glad I killed the doe the way I did, it worked out great. I am looking for a smaller caliber. That's probably not. I'm probably not going to load to max speed or load a bullet at max speed for that kind of a hunt, because honestly, as much as I think, oh well, we could have that 400 or 500 yard shot, and if it's close to the last day, like, well, I'm going to take that shot because I want that deer.
Yeah.
Or it may just be the only opportunity, and for all I know, it's the only deer I'm going to see. Then I'm going to take the shot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true, but even a slower bullet and a smaller caliber can do 400 or 500 yards most of the time.
Most
no problem.
Yep.
And hitting a little slower at 100 yards or 65 yards or whatever it is, you're just going to, there's going to be that much less chance of, because, your heart's pounding, you run up on the beach, you're standing, you take a tripod shot. Sure, you should hit really close to where you're aiming.
Yeah.
But it can be a lot harder than you think to make that shot and execute that shot the way you plan on it.
And to that point, when I was running the data for this 125 HHT, it's capable out to 650 yards. And that's with average speeds. That's not cranking anything up.
Yeah, I'm out to 800 on my 168 HHT.
Even the 139 grain shock hammer was capable out to 475 yards.
Wow.
So you're not really you're not limited.
Right. Well, and my biggest thing is if I'd shot that deer, I shot a little further back than where I was aiming out. She was quartering towards, and I think she took a step forward as I shot, and all those kinds of things equate into those that kind of a thing. But if I had somehow shifted or shot a little further forward instead of a little far back, I wouldn't have had front shoulders.
Right.
I would have had some shanks.
Yeah.
Right, like on the front of that deer.
Yeah.
Almost any size deer.
Yeah.
That would have been the case with the way that thing just, especially once I hit bone. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I shot a deer last year with a Barnes, quartering away through the chest cavity between the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't destroy any meat.
Right.
Didn't destroy the heart. A piece of that hammer bullet went over top of the heart on this one, and I had to cut it off. It was like it took out a piece of the lungs, and it didn't even hit anywhere near the lungs. Right? And I'm like,
right.
I mean, it hit just behind them, but you know what I mean? It was a
and that's it's dramatic.
There's a reason we're sponsored by Hammer Bullets, and it's not because we just they're the first people that signed on. It's because when we heard about them and we learned about them, like these actually are a great product.
Yeah.
And there's a reason I shoot them as much as I can.
Yep.
They definitely work well.
And for somebody learning to reload, while there's not a lot of there is a lot more data now with this that they have on their website.
Yeah.
The biggest issue with the forums is finding the data that you want.
Right.
This makes it easy to find.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm sure they do some combing through there and whatnot,
sure,
but how reputable is the stuff you find on a forum,
Right. Well, Steve had it very, very managed.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm sure they do a lot of combing through that information and making sure there's nothing irresponsible on there, but
right.
But no, and I would say that's you mentioned something an important distinction. I think to your point, Dalton, hammer bullets do perform and will have better, wound cavity and whatnot with the higher speeds due to the nature of the bullet.
Shock value.
But they do not require those higher speeds. Like you said, Mo, they will work and they're guaranteed to work to their minimum velocity rating, whether that's 1,800 or 1,700 feet per second. And you can pretty much guarantee if you're above that, they're going to have the terminal performance you want.
Right.
So
it may not blow a golf or a tennis ball sized hole out the other side of your deer.
Right. That's not always what you want, though.
Exactly. Like it worked out fine for me. But I mean, the bullet passed 2 inches under the spine, and there was a chunk missing out of the spine. That I mean, I've seen some rough shots on animals, like with bones hit and stuff. I hadn't seen anything like that.
Yeah. Just because we're on this topic right now, I'm just on their website because that's just what we do when we're talking about hammer bullets.
Oh, yeah.
I think I want to try out that 181 grain shock hammer. It's a recommended twist rate of 1 and 11.5.
What grain?
181, 30 caliber shock hammer. The G1 is 429. So
That's not bad.
It's nothing to write home about as far as ballistic coefficient, but
it's very usable.
That doesn't matter to me because it's a 400 yard and under.
I would say it doesn't matter inside that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Inside the quarter mile and under, that's plenty.
Mm-hmm.
And for a 300 Win Mag in that Tika, I can stabilize that. I can probably get it up there around that 29 and change, which is all I need.
Mm-hmm.
That would be maybe have to a little winter project.
There you go.
To do some.
There you go.
Do some load development here. Anyway,
well, and that's all good takeaways. Honestly, if the gist of it is, a little bit slower bullet will do less meat damage.
Yes.
And the rest of it, you've just got to play around and figure out what works best for your purpose. If you're trying to reach out and touch 700 yards, you're going to want a bullet that's capable of that. You're not going to want to shoot a heavy shock hammer because it's not going to reach that far. It's going to taper out before it gets there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're only shooting close range, maybe you can shoot a lighter bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Get a little bit less recoil, a little bit less drop. But really, I would say whatever is the most accurate load for you.
Yeah.
And that's what I pointed out for him with these two differences between the 118 HHT and the 125.
Yeah.
Because one's rated for a 1 in 9 twist, one's rated for a 1 in 8. And that's a cool thing. Like I said, Hammer gives you all this data. It tells you what the optimal twist rate is for these bullets. So you can know before you even order them.
Yeah.
And might I mention, you can order sample kits or sample packs of 15.
15, yeah.
So you don't have to invest a ton of money into something that might not work.
Yeah.
And they're accurate enough. That's enough to find a load.
I've heard of guys, finding a load and then hunting with the last few.
if you're careful about how you do it, if it's your first time reloading, you should probably just order 50 and to get the hang of it.
Or if you're not sure what you want to shoot, heavier or light, order 15 of each.
Well, right.
Exactly.
And you're not even out the money you would for 50 of one.
So since we're talking about light bullets and crazy cartridges, I looked at their 300 rum.
Yeah.
They show the 120 and 124 data there.
Yeah.
You have any guesses?
Wait, what?
300 rum, 120 grain bullet.
Boy.
So for those of you who want to reach that 4,000 feet per second,
holy smokes,
4,100 with H350 at a max velocity and max pressures with the 120 or 124 Hammer Hunter.
Wait, which powder?
H4350.
Wow.
And a 300 rum. 4,100 feet per second, yeah.
That's like 22,250 velocity.
That's more than that.
With a
I guess if you run
grain bullet.
Yeah.
That isn't going to fall apart and will still perform properly terminally when you hit the target. Granted, your deer will be inside out.
Yeah.
But
it'll be skinned and cooked ready for you when you get there.
Smoking.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to run some
barrel life is going to be about 60 rounds.
We won't get into this.
We
won't get into this now.
Definitely don't want to be doing that, but
we won't get into this now. But I'm going to have to run some ballistics data on that just to see what your max range. Because normally 120 grain 30 cal isn't going to get you very far.
But at 4,000
muzzle velocity,
an extra 1,000 feet per second doesn't hurt.
Might do a lot. That might do a lot.
I wonder what that would do to a brown bear.
Oh,
I
know a guy that might be able to find out.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dalton buys a 300 rum.
I know.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Or, I think you know somebody that has a 300 rum.
I do.
So
I know two guys with
might be able to borrow one.
Definitely not.
Definitely
Still not interested, huh?
No chance.
All right, let's take a break real quick. Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 30-378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure. All right, so the next topic is a little bit more serious, just for this starting bit at least. I want to touch on these two stories we're about to talk about very carefully because they're both very recent, but basically both of these stories kind of got me thinking about safety in the state of Alaska. You know, we talk a lot about hunting, a lot about going out on adventures, going out on boats, going out hiking on wheelers, out on to faraway places on the road system. And, you know, Alaska is a big, beautiful state. There's a lot to do here. There's a lot of, you know, just excitement and adventure to be had. There's a lot that can go right. There's also a lot that can go wrong. And there's a lot of dangers associated with it. You know, there a lot of people come here and, you know, they do their hunt and they leave and they might, you know, say see a bunch of bears and never have a problem and go home and just have had a great experience. And there's other people that, you know, get caught up in bad situations, things they might not have foreseen happening. And it can get real bad when that happens. And, you know, the two things that kind of brought this into my mind is, you know, recently here in the state, there have been several people killed, essentially just due to the elements, you know, due to just Alaska being Alaska.
Exposure.
One of them here close to home, you know, a lot of, there's a lot of people in the caribou hunting world that know of the Steese Highway. There were recently 2 people that passed away. I believe they got stuck in some snowdrifts up there on their way out to one of the villages. And so not hunting related, but in an area that you would end up in if you were hunting. And, you know, I'm not sure the full circumstances. There's some reports and some articles and whatnot. We're not going to dive too deep into the details of these particular events, but, you know, the long and short of it is they were just making a standard drive to a place between 2 places that they knew very well on a road system. I'm sure they've driven several times, if not dozens and dozens and dozens of times, right? And just this one time, got hung up in some bad weather, maybe didn't have all the right stuff to be prepared, and it, unfortunately, you know, they passed away in that situation. And a similar situation down there in for anybody around the area of Sitka, down in the southeast region of the state. There was a ship that capsized, or not a ship, but a boat that capsized. It looked like it says north of Sitka ways. Somewhere out there.
It was up by Chichagof Island.
And 3 people were rescued from that. Looks like the Coast Guard got out there, but 2 people were unfortunately killed in that accident, and just due to getting caught up in inclement, you know, bad weather. Looks like it says the weather in the area was 8 to 10 knots of wind with 9-foot seas and below freezing temperatures. That's a bad combination.
9-foot seas, and I think that report went out to the Coast Guard. I was actually reading that on the way out of town for this last trip. My dad and I saw that article while we were in the airport in Fairbanks. But that was, I think it was 5 people on board. And 2 of them perished. In the water, you know, whether it was from drowning or just hypothermia and exposure.
In those conditions, who knows?
And it was, I if I'm not mistaken, I should have gone back and reread this just for sake of detail, but I think the SOS call went out late. It was late in the day.
It looks like it was about
mistaken.
5:15 p.m. is when they got the call, and then 5:50 p.m. is when they got there. Is what this
real
this
close to
saying.
Dark, if not dark, by the time they got there.
Right.
You know, so that's a bad situation. It is hard to find people, survivors in the water.
Unless you've got some kind of a reflective, life jacket or float coat, that is imperative when you're out there in those kind of conditions. You don't just want a life jacket that makes you float, but you want a life jacket that has some reflectors on it so that they can find you. A couple of those life preservers that you can get, you can also attach a little water activated light to it.
Right. Yeah.
Now those
a lot of the ones they have on the airplanes, I think, do that too.
Yeah. They do. But I've used those before deer hunting down in other parts of Southeast. That I don't like them for hunting because when it's pouring down rain, the lights the lights always flashing.
Yeah. I can
so
see
that's kind of a pain. But if you have a situation where if you're not hunting and you're just wearing a life jacket and you're operating a boat, when I first started hunting down that part of the state, I wore a life jacket everywhere when I was in the boat, and I need to make sure that I continue to do that. There are definitely times, if you're fishing or if you're trying to glass, you don't want your life jacket over the top of your binoculars. And there are a lot of people that don't wear life jackets. But man, your chances are very, very low.
Yeah.
If you go over the side of the boat or if your boat goes down and you don't have a life jacket on your person, even if you just have it tethered like through your belt loop to where you can at least just climb into it when you go in the water, like at least you've got a fighting chance.
Right.
But if you're not attached to it and you go in the water, you don't have a very good chance of making it out there. And it's amazing that the Coast Guard got there in enough time to say that they're 3 guys.
Absolutely.
That is that is great effort on their part.
Like you pointed out with the whole, it doesn't say here whether they had lights on or not, but humans don't really stand out very well in dark water and even in lit water, honestly. I mean, you're a very small object in a very vast area.
Yeah.
And the only thing they can really see most of the time would be your face. And that's if you're pointing directly at them.
Yeah.
It's a very bad situation to end up in. Yeah. And, again, we're not going to dive too deep into these particular examples, but just these, unfortunate instances where people lost their lives due to just being out in Alaska. And it got me really thinking about, how much people put themselves in situations without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Where you could end up, unfortunately, losing your life. You could just, how many people do you think go up onto the Stees where these 2 people passed?
Yeah.
It's over the course of the year between the different hunts and the different things are to do up there.
Thousands.
Easily.
Thousands.
And especially in the wintertime, they have typically they have a winter hunt up there.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of people up there each winter. Yeah. And you've really got to be careful and really got to pay attention before you put yourself in these situations to give yourself the best chance of surviving. And this is not meant to be what do you call it? Paranoia, kind of segment here, but it is something to keep in mind. There's a difference between being prepared but expecting the best situation you're going to ever encounter. You might have all good weather and all success and come home with a great story. You could have the exact opposite, and you've got to be ready no matter what Alaska throws at you. So, our hearts go out to the families of these individuals, and we're very sorry for your loss. And we're going to hopefully maybe see if we can't keep a few other people from ending up in the same situation. So I figured we could break this down pretty easily to, basically the different levels of how you would transport around the state.
Yeah.
So the most common one typically is driving.
Yep.
When you're in your truck, there's a lot of access in this state on the road system. But for anybody listening that's not in Alaska, the highway systems in Alaska are not exactly
not highways.
Highways, they're 2 lanes, 1 each way most of the time, unless you get down into some of the southern parts of the state.
Yeah,
they are towns can be very few and far between Just because you're on the road system doesn't actually mean you're near a town.
Right.
You're not near civilization just because you're on pavement.
Yeah.
And honestly, several of the highways around here are not actually paved.
Yeah.
Right.
You're still on a backcountry dirt road that's just named a highway.
Yeah.
And you can end up in a lot of bad situations. So, just a few. Let's just start with this one. Really bad winter storms.
Mm-hmm.
There is a very easy thing you can do when you're just about to leave for your trip to avoid getting stuck in a really bad road system, and that is the Alaska 511 website.
Yes.
If you go online and you look at the 511 website for Alaska, it'll give you the road conditions as they're known. Now, there are weather stations at various points along most highways here, and they can give you updates on the road condition. They have different color codes and different things like that can tell you.
Yeah.
And I've had situations where there's been a storm that came through 2 days ago and the road is still impassable because they just haven't been able to get to it.
Yeah.
I travel around a lot for my job. I'm driving all over the state, flying all over the state. And I've gotten stuck in my big F-350, and drifts and just deep snow that's settling on the roads.
It's really pretty easy to do.
Yeah, it really is. And especially you lose that momentum, and some, even just 6 inches of snow on the road. If you don't have like a big truck and you can't keep that momentum going, that can really get you in a lot of trouble. And like we said, towns can be few and far between. You might be just slipping and sliding around on the road, end up in not being able to go forward anymore.
Yep.
And it could be 100 miles either direction to a town.
Yeah.
You might not, there really is no walking out of that situation.
Yeah.
And so checking the road conditions first and foremost before you make any kind of long trek in this state, I would say is a big one.
Yes.
That's something you can do immediately before you leave, so you're aware of what's happening. On top of watching weather conditions, if a storm's coming through.
Yeah.
And just knowing the general route, knowing the areas winds tend to flow through at the highest points.
Yeah.
I got stuck, and this was this April. I was driving out off one of the highways, and I got stuck for 12 hours up on a flat on the top of a mountain system. And I was heading out towards Minto, and there was just this crazy windstorm with this crazy snowstorm, and there were state trucks out there, and they couldn't plow it about fast enough before the wind drifts would blow it right back in. We ended up, like 20 of us trucks that were all out there just tried to make just a straight line through, put the biggest truck in front, going back into the smallest trucks and just plowing through. And by the time my truck would get to whatever snowdrift that they went through, you couldn't see their tire tracks. I was right behind the guy,
right?
And the wind was just blowing that hard and that heavy that it just filled in their tire tracks before I even got there.
Yeah.
It can get really bad here in Alaska really quick.
Yeah.
And so just keeping an eye on that is a big thing, being aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
And aside from that, for this situation, keeping a winter gear kit with you at all times.
So I would say number 2, the winter gear kit should be in your vehicle no matter where you're traveling. I'll just say that, even if you're traveling between North Pole and Fairbanks, because you get stuck in the ditch and, if it's 20, 30 below, which you can try to plan for the weather, but we had days this week and last week when it said 10 degrees and it was 20 below.
Right.
Last several weeks we've had days it said 20 below and it was 10, 20 degrees.
I planned outdoor work during those days.
But the number 2 thing, having a full tank of gas is a huge deal.
Absolutely.
Once again, even around town, it's really, really easy to get in the habit. I can fill up my truck once a week and I'm good. But at that end of the week, it's low usually, right?
Yeah. Especially at today's gas prices.
And right. My truck, a fill up is $120.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not from E.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now all it would take though, it costs the same amount of money to fill it up at half full.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a hard habit to get into, but it's a good habit to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can say just from the example I just spoke on, getting stuck up there off of out in the Ptarmigan Flats. The we had a full tank going out there, even though I know I can get to where I'm going with a half tank. I've done it in the summertime. Right.
Yeah.
And we had a full tank going out there. When we were stuck out there were people that had to turn their vehicles off to conserve gas. Yeah. And they were having to turn them off, turn them back on to try and warm up again, turn them back off because they were out there stuck. We ended up being there for 12 hours.
Yeah.
And they had a quarter tank of gas.
Yeah, that's not a smart idea.
And there was one lady, I had to jump her vehicle because she turned it off and she couldn't get it to turn back on because it was negative 40 and blowing winds.
And when you're idling a bunch, you don't necessarily charge your batteries very well.
Right.
And there's a lot that happens with vehicles in the cold. Yeah. I had a problem with my truck a few weeks back. It was like 30 below and I forgot to plug in that morning. Wasn't going to work that day, but I was going to go somewhere the next morning. I had forgot to plug in like I do every night before work.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up and I was going, I got places to be. Let me go start my truck. I went out there to start it. It didn't start.
Yeah.
Turned over about as many times as it turns over, but at that point, it sucked so much juice at that temperature. And if the truck hadn't been plugged in, I didn't get that truck started till the next day.
Yeah.
After messing with it all day with what I had. Now, I got some better battery chargers and stuff at my house now. Spent a bunch of money on that day with that. Got my other truck running, got the other car running. My wife's car wouldn't start either. She wasn't planning on leaving till the afternoon, but even plugged in 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, it can make a huge difference.
It didn't start then. Like it just...
like 30 below or something?
It was 30 below that morning, and it was an anomaly that very ever rarely happens to me.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I had brand new batteries in my truck.
Right.
I'm not going to say you have to put brand new batteries in your vehicle every year, because if you take care of everything else, you'll be fine.
I've been running the same battery for 3 years.
But, and there's batteries, I've run the same batteries sometimes for 5 or 6 years. If you take care of them, they're fine. But the thing is, when they get towards that end of that age, they're not going to turn your diesel truck over at 30 below and start it like they do when they're new.
Yeah.
Because if you're turning your truck over at 30 below your diesel truck, you're going to kill your batteries. They lose their life that way.
A lot of battery.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
I would say that's especially important when you're, or not only having the full tank and make sure you can keep your battery charged up while you're out there. If you're going super far out, like say you're going up for some winter caribou up off the slope or something like that, bringing extra gas.
Yeah.
Bringing extra gas is a good idea.
Keep that tank full.
Right. And just having, like, if you're going to go, like I say, if you're going to go off the slope for caribou, if you get, if you're up past Adigan, great hunting spot there, Adigan Pass, you park at the top, you hunt down the cliff.
He's just being facetious, folks.
That's not, you can't even hunt right there.
Yeah.
Legally, you can't hunt right there.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're giving spots away. So
you're a funny guy, Mariah.
I know I am. Right. Yeah.
Funny guy.
Anyhow, but you get up past Adigan. If you go very far past it all, you might just run right into Dead Horse and fill up.
Yeah.
I mean,
just go all the way through.
Go all the way through and fill up, or head on your way back, stop at Coldfoot, or stop at Coldfoot on your way up. I mean, there's a lot to be said just for knowing your vehicle and knowing what it can do, but don't push it.
Yeah, I'll say that gas is going to be expensive in those places, but it's a lot cheaper than the alternative.
I have, in one of my trucks, I have a 100-gallon tank. So when I leave town, I put 50 gallons in it. That's more than another full tank.
100-gallon auxiliary tank in the bed.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a 30-gallon tank in the truck, and I have that auxiliary tank. My other truck doesn't, but I have 3 diesel cans that I can throw in there. Right?
Yeah.
And that way, for one, I don't have to pay $7-8 a gallon at Coldfoot.
Yeah.
No. Right.
Now, just kind of to piggyback off of that whole, having a lot of gas for your vehicle when you're going way out of town, if you do end up off the road or stuck in a big drift, that is dangerous for other reasons as well. You might think, well, I've got plenty of fuel. I can wait for somebody to come along with like a plow truck or somebody else with another pickup truck that can pull me out because you've got tow straps, or they'll have tow straps, which you should have your own. That's,
you should. It's a big one.
That's part of your recovery kit. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But you need to be concerned about exhaust poisoning.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of people that go off the road up here. It happens every winter where they go off the road and that they get stuck in a big snow berm. Maybe even it's not blowing and drifting, but you don't realize that when you tanked off the road into a 6-foot ditch, your tailpipe is covered in snow now. And all of that carbon monoxide
is just drafting back into your truck
Yeah.
or your car. Much
Right.
easier to do with a car because that exhaust pipe is only,
Right.
4 inches off the ground to begin with.
Right.
My buddy Remy had that happen. He got stuck on the side of the road somewhere in his Chevy 3/4 ton pickup, and the wind started blowing. He went to sleep and just waiting for somebody to come get him. He had even called for help, and he had somebody coming, but it was going to be a few hours out.
Mm-hmm.
So he just thought, well, I'll just snooze in the front seat, leave the truck running. I got plenty of fuel. I'm not worried about that. I don't want to stay warm, and it's it's 20 or 25 below outside. Leave the truck running so it doesn't shut off, and then I can't start it. That what we just talked about there.
Right.
But the wind picked up while I was asleep, and he said he woke up and he felt sick.
Mm-hmm.
He got out of his truck and actually threw up.
Yeah.
And he said, "Man, I don't know what's wrong with me." And then he said, "It hit me. The wind's blowing. It wasn't blowing when I went to sleep." And he ended up going over to the back of his truck, and sure enough, there was snow piled up to the side of his bed, and it was totally blocked off. He was probably minutes away from not waking up.
Oh yeah. It happens
and
quick.
That happens every year.
So for people who might be confused with that and say, well, exhaust is hot, it's going to melt the snow. Yes, it will. But this is what happens. It melts the snow around the exhaust. But then when all that snow's built up around your vehicle, comes right up under your vehicle, and it just gets blown right into the vents.
Yeah, it will melt and create a channel.
It creates a pathway for it to flow,
right.
but it's not necessarily going to be up into the air.
Yeah, it's not going to be up and out.
If the tailpipe was full of snow, your truck would your vehicle would shut off.
Yeah.
Right. But that's another thing. You mentioned, not starting. We've talked about that. That's actually, honestly, I think that's a much bigger deal than just keeping it running for you to stay warm. Because I worked for a company several years back, and I still do this sometimes, driving pilot car.
Yeah.
The rule for that company was unless you can plug in, you don't shut your vehicle off in the wintertime, period.
Runs the whole time.
Keep it full of gas, keep your cans or whatever you got, auxiliary fuel tank full. You do not shut it off. Because the moment you shut that thing off, and maybe you're completely safe, you might be in dead horse or cold foot, but you shut that thing off.
And it's 40 below.
And it's 40 below, and then you try to start it, and even with a jump, you kill batteries.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you just cost your company thousands of dollars to get that vehicle back to Fairbanks and in a shop.
Yeah.
And
just keep it running.
Just keep it running. A few dollars that costs.
Yeah.
Right? It costs, and the peace of mind and keeping, that's where the gas is important. Just leave your vehicle running.
Yeah.
I do this. Because of that policy, I find myself with my vehicle running even in Fairbanks more often than almost anybody else I know, except for the guy who was my boss during that.
Right. Well, and kind of to back to what you were talking about, Dalton, how quickly that exhaust can get covered.
Yeah.
There was a separate incident. I drive around a lot in the state where I once again got stuck. And this time I wasn't on the road. I was on the side of the road, kind of like you had described, truck at an angle.
Yeah.
Within a matter of 2 hours of being stuck there, the snow went from me being able to open my door and just hop out of the truck as I want to on the driver's side, almost being up to the bottom of the window.
Wow.
Burying the truck in snow.
With the wind drifts.
And it was blowing hard.
Wow.
It was coming down heavy with the snow. And I would get out probably every 15 minutes and clear that exhaust out because, and I probably maybe should have done it even more often than that because every time I got out, it was covered up. And every time I got out of the truck, it felt like just getting sandblasted.
Yeah.
On any exposed skin.
Yeah.
And it was an intense thing, and it really opened my eyes. I was young at that point. That was early on, and that,
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, that opened my eyes to just how vicious the weather can be up here when you're just on just a run of the mill drive.
Yep. So here's something else that I just thought of, and this is something that I do even just everyday life with a vehicle up here in the wintertime. I don't trust electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Vehicles are more and more and more electronic nowadays. I have known 3 different people that have been locked out of their truck because they got out, to go to the bathroom, stop on the side of the road, take a leak.
Yep.
And the truck is running. One of the times it was running. Keys in the ignition. Truck is running. Got out. Closed the door behind him. Clunk. Click.
Really?
Whole truck locked up.
No kidding.
Complete system malfunction. And they were locked out of their truck in the middle of wintertime. Now, luckily, that guy, it was warm out, and somebody else was able to come along and happened to have a little recovery kit. They were able to pry the door open just enough and get a wire down there and unlock it.
Right.
The other one, the guy was predator calling, came back to his truck, opened it up, set his keys on the seat. The truck was unlocked. All 4 doors were unlocked. He was, taking off his camo over whites, took off his gaiters, set his gun in the back seat, took off his warm hat, and took off his over parka. And then he closed the back door of the truck with the keys on the front seat. The truck was not running. Well, he clicked that back door shut. Boom, whole truck locked up. And so now he's outside without a hat. And this day it was 25 below zero.
Yeah.
What saved him, and he was not more than 20 minutes out of town.
It's a long way to walk.
What saved him was he had a cell phone in his pocket. So he was able to call, and somebody raced out there with another truck key and was able to get into his truck. But, he's standing there for like a half hour waiting for the person to get there.
Walking around, hands over the ears.
Yeah. Walking around, pulled his hoodie over his ears and, tried to keep his head warm. And walking around with his hands in his vest pocket because all he's got on is a hoodie and a vest and a pair of snow pants and bunny boots. So, he was better off than most. But my habit is, and this hasn't happened to me yet, it definitely could. But when I get out of my truck, whether I'm in town, if the keys are in the vehicle, I do not close my door. No chance I close my door. Even in the summertime, spring, summer, and fall, I don't close that door if my keys are in that truck.
So does your truck have an auto lock function though? I don't believe yours is new enough to have that.
I don't think so.
I know both of mine don't.
No, but I'll tell you this.
But it has electronic locks.
My wife's truck doesn't have electronic locks, but it's old enough. It's a 97. And the lock on the driver's door at one point was loose.
Yeah.
And so if you close the door too hard, it would just fall shut and lock it. Yeah. I've been locked out of her vehicle a couple times.
Best thing you can do in that situation, and this is what I do. I have 2 trucks. One I have 2 keys for.
Yeah.
One of them's not even a chipped key. Can't start the truck and drive away
but
with
it can
that
open
key.
the door.
But it can open the door.
Yeah.
And it can start and leave the truck running with it, right? And that way I can start my truck, close the door with the other key in my pocket, lock it, and walk into a store and not have that thing in the back of my head that most of us have at some point in the winter. Man, should I leave my truck unlocked? I only have 1 key. Well, I want it to be warm.
Yeah.
Right. And most of the time it's fine, but hey.
Auto start.
Well, if you have it, yes.
Yeah. And a hard key like that is a good idea because I'll tell you this, I keep a key fob on my keychain with me at all times because of that, just in case of that, right?
But what if the battery dies?
That's what I'm getting to.
Oh,
so
that's what lives in the back of my head.
I've had that happen where I was out chasing caribou around for a couple hours and I came back to the truck and the battery had frozen in my key fob.
Yeah.
And luckily I was able to warm it up enough to get the door unlocked, but I was a little worried.
Yeah.
It was negative 30 that day,
Yeah.
And
so for me, a second key for my second truck that I only have a single key for right now is something I need to get.
Yeah.
Some of those older Chevys, and my wife used to have a 2005 Chevy Avalanche that she had as a teenager, and then she had up until we got married and shortly thereafter. And that truck had a real problem with the what's that system called?
The anti-theft.
Yeah, there's a name for it that I forget, but yeah, it would have the little orange, vehicle and lock light come on, and pass lock is the system, and so every once in a while, her truck would just randomly lock, even while you were in it.
Oh, really?
It wasn't like a drive activated thing where you were in drive or once you started moving, it was just randomly just lock up, and so that really made me not trust that truck particularly, but. 2 of the other instances that I talked about earlier with guys getting locked out of their trucks were older Chevy trucks. That pass lock system is known to fail as those trucks age. So even though my 05 Toyota pickup truck doesn't have a pass lock system, just like those old Chevys, it still does have electronic locks. So in my mind, it's something that could possibly happen, and it's an easy enough thing. I don't need to close the door all the way if I'm just getting out of the truck to take a leak. Or once I start the truck and put the key in it and I'm still loading the truck bed with gear, I don't need to close the door. Big deal. I can just, close it but not latch it.
Right.
That's just something to keep in mind. And it might sound a little bit eclectic and
the biggest thing
a little bit over the top
when you're out of town.
Yeah.
Too, when you're not close by.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is that kind of falls along what tends to be the theme with safety and preparedness, which is redundancy.
Yeah.
Forward thinking and redundancy are the two things you'll see the most is foreseeing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And making sure you've got multiple ways to tackle that situation.
And I'm sure there's plenty of people listening to this right now that just say, well, have a little mag box underneath your wheel well with a spare key. Yeah. How many of those do you find in parking lots on the side of the highway because they fall off?
That works great until you have 3 inches of ice built up.
Yeah.
Wire a key to your vehicle if you're going to do that. Take a piece of baling wire, a piece of trapping wire, and just wire it up under there somewhere. That's what my dad used to do.
Don't trust a magnet.
Yeah, because unless the magnet,
those magnets fall off all the time.
If you can put it in throw it under the side of your bed. In the older trucks, you could do that. Now, it was obviously you could walk. Most people's you could walk up to the driver's slide your hand under there and find a key. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Have you done that? You got into my truck with that one time.
I did. I actually know someone.
Yeah.
You all know this person that had a hide a key on their truck and a burglar found it, broke into the truck.
Yeah. I don't do hide a keys anymore.
People look for that. I don't do them either. I have a whole different system that I'm not going to talk about.
There's better systems than the hide a keys. There's better ways to hide than the easy places to get to.
Yeah.
But so we're talking about redundancy and things. When I leave town, I don't just have a fuel tank of gas. I don't just have, warm weather gear that hopefully I don't need.
Cold weather gear
to stay warm in the cold weather.
Yeah.
I don't just have those things, gloves, some form of gloves.
Yeah. Sleeping bag.
Decent hat. Yeah. I carry the kind of warm cold weather gear that I won't need a sleeping bag with.
If you get stuck overnight, I want a sleeping bag.
So I was going to say, for what I consider to be a complete cold weather bag, and this is just based off of what I like to keep with me when I'm traveling around for work, is I've got extra thermals in there.
Yep.
Some light puffy stuff, just in case, it's maybe not that cold and I don't want to throw all the heavy winter gear on, but I need something to cut the bite. Then bibs, and like a Carhartt coat or something like that, something big, heavy, nice winter coat, right? Parka.
I don't consider Carhartt heavy enough for emergency cold weather.
Some of them are. I've been with a lot of them for when it's like -30, -40.
I have that Carhartt Montana series, which is their highest rated stuff. I just bought it this winter.
That's a newer thing, isn't it?
That is really
that's
warm
the newer
stuff.
one. I'm talking about like the old Carhartt black stuff that everybody always used to rave about.
I've had great experiences.
I have had not so great experiences with some of that.
You should have got it warranted, buddy. Because mine works great.
I bought it used at a garage
to go over other layers like James was talking about. It's a great shell to go over other insulated layers.
The other thing is, like you said, with a sleeping bag, that's not necessarily for sleeping.
No, I know.
If you have, let's say it is -60 outside, you throw your puffy layer on with your thermals, and you've got your bibs on, and then you crawl into like a neg 60 bag, a neg 40 bag, which,
Wiggies
is going to cost you a little bit, but it's worth it.
$250.
I was going to say the Wiggies are going to be probably your best route.
Oh yeah. Bar none.
And you can literally lay there and wait for rescue.
Yep.
And you're not going to freeze to death.
That's true.
Yep.
So
a sleeping bag is a good option for that. I don't always carry one. I usually am wearing a gear that I'm going to be comfortable in outside already, or it's right on the seat next to me. I have that. That's just what I have because I'm in Alaska. I have to go on top of that, like, a refrigerator snow machine set or something like that, to where I can then put that on over that and I'm good to 60 below.
They have, Refrigerware makes a coverall set that is actually rated to -50.
Yeah.
And so if you have layers on underneath that, that'll be just as good as a -50.
So that's what I do.
Yeah.
Because that way, if I need that super cold gear, and I can still walk.
But you should have basically that, I don't even know what you'd call that outer like cocoon layer, kind of like that ultra cold layer that you can put on top of everything else and just build up that layering as much as possible.
So that's what I do.
Because if you're exposed for 12 plus hours, I mean, good night.
You're in trouble.
I also carry extra oil, extra transmission fluid, extra coolant, tools. I usually have, when I go on a road trip, especially with the truck I've driven for years now, I have a whole kit in that truck. I could just about take that truck apart on the side of the road. And it may sound extreme.
Yeah, but
I've got a 1/2 inch impact. I've got a full 1/2 inch impact set. I've got 3/8 sockets, 3/8 ratchet. I've got the standard wrenches, screwdrivers, and it's not all the greatest tools, the nicest set of stuff. But you've been with me when we've had issues with stuff.
There's been plenty of times that you and I have fixed stuff on the side of the road.
And I say, oh, I got tools for that. And I pull it out. Boom, it's done.
Yeah.
I'll carry a kit like that on my wheeler. And I think that's a pretty good transition.
Oh, yeah.
Right there.
Well, we're not quite
We're not done?
yet.
Okay. All right. I didn't think
we haven't even talked about recovery yet.
Well,
Good try, though.
Well, it was a try because I wasn't sure if you guys were done, but I thought I'd shoot for it.
Got to shoot your shot.
Right. It would have been a good transition.
But just having enough stuff to survive for any given amount of time, and you know what?
Yeah.
Go along on your estimation. Have some candy bars. Have extra water. Make sure the water doesn't freeze in your truck, and then you go on the road trip, and now the truck's dead, and you have ice and no water.
Well, and if you are planning on bringing any kind of extra food, say you have some extra Mountain House or Peak refuels laying around, and so you want to throw those in your truck for extra food,
bring that jet boil.
Bring the jet boil, but I would recommend bringing some sterno or something like that, because you don't want to rely on the fact if you go to sleep and it's you're all decked out in your winter gear, right? Because you're smart like that.
Yeah.
And you wake up and it's still -40 outside, and it's been -40 the whole time. And maybe that fuel's not somewhere warm.
Yeah.
That jet boil fuel's not going to work so good at -40.
If you're going to use butane fuel, like for a jet boil type of a stove, you've got to have that butane canister in your sleeping bag or inside your coat to keep it warm. Right. Because if it does get too cold, then it ain't going to work.
Toast. Yeah.
It ain't going to work.
But bringing extra food is again, that should be right in there with your cold weather gear.
Yep.
Honestly, it should all, if you just have like a duffel and you can just keep that in your truck at all times.
Yep.
And then, like you said, with tools and stuff, have a road trip kit.
DeWalt makes a really nice battery jumper compressor pack. That
what's the amp rating on that? Do you know? I know you have one.
Yeah, I do.
So the reason I ask that is when I had trouble starting my pickup truck at my house.
I'm going to look that up right now.
I tried jumping it with a gas pickup, with 2 gas vehicles, 1 to each battery, and it would not do it.
Really?
It wasn't. Which
blew
kidding. My mind.
That's insane. I've never thought of that.
If you drive a diesel, carry 2 sets of jumper cables.
Yeah.
I do that.
That's a good call.
Once I got my other truck running, which I went and bought a 2,000 amp jump kit to jump that cold diesel, and I was hesitant to buy it, but it wasn't the option I wanted, but it was basically the best option they had, so I got it. It was one of the smaller packs.
Yeah,
as long as it's above like 5 below 0, it's supposed to have the 2,000 amps, which is pretty good.
Okay,
but anyway, I jumped to one truck with it.
1,600 amp no problem. Is the one I've got.
1,600 act's actually really good.
Yeah.
Now,
maybe not enough for a diesel, but yeah.
It would be enough probably if it's not a completely dead battery.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing with that, and what you got to be careful with that, is you're going to have that with you. And so your truck's not running. You don't want to drain your truck's battery. You're going to want to use the light on it. You're going to want to plug your phone into it.
No. And I have dark energy chargers for my phone.
I know you do.
I have a headlamp from Pete's.
I know you do. I have my own separate battery packs too, but it's so tempting with those things to plug your phone into. And while it has that 1,600 amp jump boost capability,
that's 1,600 peak.
That's peak amp that it's going to drain in a matter of seconds when it's drawn.
Yep.
You can charge your phone a few times on that and drain that complete battery.
Yeah, you really can. Yeah.
And for I just
and I say that from experience.
Just for me, that battery pack is only there to jumpstart that truck.
You have to have that mentality. Though.
Absolutely.
That is only in my truck to do that.
Absolutely.
If my phone dies, tough luck, Buttercup.
I don't know if you do this.
That's my fault for letting the phone die.
You are supposed to keep those battery packs at full capability. You're supposed to bring them inside, warm them up, and charge them at least once a month.
I was literally just going to bring up if you get one of those and you throw it under the back seat and forget about it in October and you need it in January. I'm sorry to tell you, it's probably not going to. It's not going to have 1600 amps.
Yeah, it ain't going to work.
And don't charge them when they're cold.
Yeah.
If you charge them when they're cold, they will. You'll actually ruin their ability to store power.
Yep. Now you had mentioned something about recovery.
Yeah, recovery gear.
One other important aspect is if you can self-rescue.
Yeah.
If you can be prepared to self-rescue, then you're in the best situation possible, right? If you can hopefully not have to wait hours for your buddy to come with a truck or wait for the chance of another vehicle coming down that same bad road that you were just on, or, any of these situations where you're going to be stuck out there for a while.
Yeah.
If you can try to put yourself in an advantageous spot with gear to get yourself out of that, that's going to be your best bet. One of those that's real easy is if you can get a set of chains for your truck.
Yeah.
Get those. That's not going to be something you do necessarily after the fact, at least not very easily.
Yeah.
But
it's doable.
But if you know you're getting into, some shoddy terrain, then just put them on ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because you'll be glad you did.
Chains are a lot easier preventatively.
Yes, that good preventative measure.
The number one thing you need to have for recovery, I think all of us would agree.
A really big spoon.
A shovel.
Yes.
Because if you get into a ditch 6 feet of snow, you are going to have one grand old time trying to put chains on buried up to your eyeballs.
2 feet of snow.
Yeah. Even 2 feet of snow, but out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I mean, you go off the side of the steez somewhere and you're off in 12 foot of snow in a drift or something like that. Good luck wading around through that trying to put chains on.
And here's the other thing. Even if you're not trying to put chains on, that time I was stuck in the ditch with the truck at basically, a 30-degree angle, sitting off to the side.
Yeah.
And the snow was coming in burying us.
Yeah.
When our friends showed up, because we didn't end up showing up at the place we were supposed to be, and luckily they waited for us and realized we weren't showing up and came looking for us. But when they showed up and they tried to tug us out, they couldn't.
Yeah.
Because we were too buried.
Right.
We had to undig that whole truck from that ditch.
That's a really good way to stay warm while you're waiting.
Yeah,
Even if you can't get yourself out,
just go dig
getting
snow
out with a shovel and dig as much as you can.
Yeah.
Dig as much out from under the vehicle as you can, because that's the number one reason you're stuck.
Not just around the tires, but get up underneath that undercarriage.
Yeah. For anybody not familiar with deep, deep snow, you high center.
Yes.
When those tires are free spinning, you're high centered.
Yeah.
You need to get under there and start chipping away at
and
that.
To be clear, chains do you zero good when you're even in 2 feet of snow in a pickup truck. If you're stuck, you can't just slap on chains and burn out of that.
No, you can't.
You got to dig out.
You're already done.
You got to dig out a lot of snow.
Yeah.
And one thing, just as a tip for the new people, if you are spinning your tires on ice and snow, stop.
Yeah.
Don't burn out. If you're not moving forward. Now, if you're rocking, by all means, rock it back and forth, forward, back,
momentum.
try to build a runway, get yourself some momentum. But if you're just sitting there burning rubber, stop.
And for those of you,
so many people dig 5-inch deep ruts for themselves.
Yeah.
But those of you that don't know, you can burn and smoke rubber on ice.
Oh, yeah.
Which sounds insane if you don't know it, but we've all done that.
Yep.
Probably all been there, even just rocking, and all of a sudden you go, "Oh, I better stop."
Well, it's either the tires or the clutch,
or the brakes, right? But I one thing with tire chains, I know a lot of people in Fairbanks who have no idea what to do with tire chains. Even people who say they've done them before. Now, I have the distinct advantage of having worked with truck drivers on the North Slope and throwing chains with them. I can throw chains faster than almost anybody I know, aside from truck drivers, because a lot.
Yeah.
And when you do it on a big rig, it's a piece of cake to do it on a pickup truck, except for room, to reach. But the biggest thing is if you, first of all, get your tire size, find a set of chains that your tire size is listed in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say, so find something close.
Yeah.
Don't find something a little bigger. Find the right size.
Yeah.
Don't buy the tire cables. Buy chains.
Yeah.
They don't have to be the super duper heavy duty, especially if you're not planning on using them a whole bunch, right? Only emergency. But then if you've never put them on before, find somebody, if you can. The best situation is find somebody who knows how to put on tire chains, who's had to use them in a situation, and have them show you how to do it.
Right.
Because they'll have learned all the wrong ways to do it. You can at least find a YouTube video, read the instruction manual, but put them on in your driveway.
Yeah.
The easiest way to do it is to lay them over the tires and to back over them and hook them up right.
Mm-hmm. Which if you do preemptively,
exactly. You can't do that in a ditch.
Right.
But hey, you know what? Get yourself burned out in your driveway a little bit and then put tire chains on. It's a whole nother experience.
Yeah.
I tell you. A lot of times you can't get 4 on. You can't even get 2 on, but you can get that 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And now, most of our vehicles today, they have locking systems, and you try to put 1 chain on, I think that's going to get you out.
It's just the other tire that spins.
The other tire will spin, even though it's locking, supposedly.
Yeah.
If you can't, you got to get both chains on.
The other thing,
the
too,
time,
is now that if you look at all those overlander rigs, you see them driving around, and I say overlander very loosely, but you see all like those Toyota 4Runners and some of the
not a big fan of
those Sequoias that people, they kit them out for off-roading. And they've always got the flat gas tanks on the sides, and they've also got those orange boards. They're like a traction board. And so that does a similar thing to like what tire chains can do. It doesn't, you're not going to go very far. I mean, it's a 3-foot long board.
Most of the time that's all you need.
But if you're just stuck in a ditch just off the road, you might only need, just like you just said, you might only need 3 feet to get back up on the road surface and be able to get traction again. So if you don't have chains, but you do have those, in most situations, just going off the road in a simple ditch dive situation, you can probably back yourself out of it with those boards. But again,
experience
practice with them.
With a traction style board. I've never used an actual traction board designed for this, but using boards or things that would have a lot of traction on them in the snow, things work a lot different than mud.
Yeah.
And you can get that thing under a tire, and that tire is just going to spit that out and dent your car.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
I've done it with 4-wheeler ramps.
I was just going to say, I went on a mission to recover Mariah a number of years ago, and we ended up getting your old blue truck out with those galvanized ramps.
Right.
But only because those particular ones had a 90-degree metal edge on them.
Yes.
If you get the ones with the rounded tubes in them, they do not work.
Nope.
But we went to get him out. And
I had those in my truck, didn't I?
you had those in your truck, and I said, just put the ramps down behind it. And it worked like a charm.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked great.
Yep.
There's a lot of surface area there. And it just gripped on those 90-degree, metal edges, and it just, it ripped it right out. It was great.
Yeah. Another simple trick is if you're in that situation where you burned out all 4 tires, let's say, and you just have these ruts that you're dug in.
Yeah.
But then you gathered your wits, you figured out that's not going to work. And then you dig under the truck and you get yourself not high centered. And you can tell that the truck should be moving because there's no snow holding the truck up. You can see all 4 tires from any given point underneath the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
You're just stuck in the ruts that you dug with your tires.
Those little ice burns.
A little bit of cat litter goes a long way.
That's true.
If you have any kind of like cat litter or oil spill, any kind of like very finely ground, not used, yes, but any kind of like finely ground coarse material, right? Then you pour a little bit of that at the beginning of your rut, and then the tires will kind of draw that into that rut and hopefully give you a little bit of traction.
Now, don't just blast the throttle.
No.
and just throw it all out.
Yeah, I'm gonna say you talking about digging the ruts.
Mhm.
The best snow tire with the most studs will spin out in a little cup of ice, and your vehicle will go nowhere.
Yeah.
It is the most frustrating thing to see.
Yeah.
That thing's in a half-inch little cup of ice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or your tires, the ones that are spinning are. And I've done the thing where I throw the tire chain under the tire.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it do? It spits the tire chain out from under the tire, grabs it and throws it behind the truck, and you're like, what in the world? Like,
spits it right back out. It's got to be attached to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of this is really great for the wintertime. Most of it is still applicable to the summertime.
Yeah.
There's a few other things to consider in the
Sure.
summertime when you're vehicle traveling.
Yeah.
Which I think is when most people tend to
Do
get
a
in
lot of
trouble.
their road. Yeah.
It's a little bit, it's less life threatening in the sense that you're not going to die from exposure as quickly as you would in like -40 with, howling winds and whatnot. But you can still get yourself in a really bad situation.
Yeah.
Being stuck out some places. As we said earlier, the highways in Alaska are not always paved.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have rocks in them.
Mm-hmm.
That can be very sharp.
Yep.
Making sure you have maybe not just one, but multiple spare tires in your vehicle when you're heading out for a long excursion where you're going to be on a dirt road is a big deal.
We've had a lot of people email into this show about questions with the caribou hunting opportunities up on the Hall Road.
Mm-hmm.
You do not drive that road with one spare tire.
Right. Yeah.
You drive that road with 2 spare tires.
At least.
Yeah.
I've personally never had a flat on that road.
Really?
And I've driven that road probably more than both of you combined.
No,
I haven't had one on that road.
Personally, myself. Now, I've been riding with people that have had flat tires.
I haven't had one on that road, and I've been up there, enough. But there's another prominent gravel road in the southern half of the state that I've been on a many number of times, and I've had one flat there.
It's a good spot to have flats.
Yeah, that is a nasty spot. My dad got a flat there hunting a number of years ago. One of my good buddies that drives that a lot got a flat there 2 years ago. Yeah, it just seems like there are some years when, DOT goes through and plows and smooths things out after the spring breakup, and they get all that ice off, but it churns up all of the nasty, big, sharp rocks. And there's a stretch of like a month before everything gets graded again, where it is just flat tire city.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I know a buddy of mine, this didn't happen to me personally, but a buddy of mine went on a drive on not that stretch of road, but a different prominent stretch of dirt road with, and this is why I say at least 2 spares.
Yeah.
With 2 spares.
Yeah.
Ended up using them both.
Yeah.
And then popped the other 2 tires as well.
Yeah.
And had to call a buddy to bring him more tires.
My first time driving.
4 blown tires.
Whoa.
Yeah.
My first time driving up the Hall Road, which is many years ago now, I was headed north, and this is a good thing to mention. When you see somebody on a road in Alaska out in the middle of nowhere and they got their hazards on, pull over and check on them.
Yep.
Yes.
That is road etiquette.
Mm-hmm.
Do unto others as you would have done unto you.
Unless they're stalking a caribou.
Yeah.
Leave them be.
Okay.
Start honking your horn.
Okay.
You all right?
If you see somebody with their hood up on their car or their truck
or working on
their
a tire
or their hazard lights on, which if you're going to stop for a problem with your vehicle, or if you're going to stop to just take a leak and you can't get off the road, number one, stop on a straight stretch and turn on your hazards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's the middle of the day. Turn on your hazards so people know that you're stopped. But I was headed north, and I didn't get more than 80 miles out of town. And there was this Chevy pickup truck stopped in the other lane, southbound. He had his hazard lights on. So I pulled over, and it was pouring down rain. And as soon as I pulled up to the truck, I could see his driver's side rear tire was flat and big old gash in it in the sidewall. And so I pulled up. He rolled his window down. I rolled my window down. And I said, how's it going? Not that I didn't know the answer to that question. And he said, well, not so good. I'm waiting on somebody to bring me a spare tire. And I said, you don't have a spare? He goes, nope. I already went through 2.
Mm-hmm.
This is his third flat.
Yep.
And I said, well, where are you coming from? Wiseman. So, Wiseman is way up there.
Yeah.
It's up it's up on the south side of the Brooks.
Another thing is good tires, because a lot of guys run their winter tires on that road. They just run Blizzaks year round or something like that. And
garbage.
those tires just go flat. And I think that's for the reason I always run a heavier duty off-road style tire.
So the reason for that is any of these winter rated tires, if they're not studded winter rated tires, but they're, rubber winter tires.
Yeah.
It's a softer rubber compound.
They're softer rubber.
It's,
they don't have as heavier, they're not 10 ply.
Right.
Or 8 ply.
That's designed to grip on the ice. However, you get those things on any kind of asphalt, hard packed dirt, anything like that, it's going to start eating that rubber away.
Yeah. It chews it
quickly.
up.
Right.
Yeah. And the depth of the tread on those winter radials is nowhere near what you want for, let's just call it an off-roading tire, which for all intended purposes, the Hall Road, the Denali Highway, the road out towards the Tote Cutoff, all of that is nasty dirt roads that is notorious for flat tires.
Yeah.
So having a proper summer tire that has deeper tread. And look, I'm not somebody that likes to push it on tires. If I've got a good set of tires, they're getting replaced when they get under half tread. That's just how it is. I can sell them for a few $100 on Facebook, move them on, and I just go buy a new set because I do not like flat tires. That is because they, and this is so obvious, but you're always trying to get somewhere. So it's such a pain when you have a flat tire. You're like, man, this is stupid. This is going to ruin my whole afternoon.
I've run like the Goodyears, the Goodyear off-road tires. They've got several. The Duratrax, and I've run a few others similar to the Duratrack that they have.
I love the Duratrax.
I've never had one of those go flat except for like when I hit a metal spike or something.
Yeah.
I've never had
I've had one Duratrack go flat
on from gravel.
I took a big rock in a sidewall.
So like I've never had one go flat from anything but steel. Or screw or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I've never had Toyos, any of the off-road Toyo style tires, or even the highway Toyo style tires.
I've had the Toyo T3 or something, and those worked okay, but they weren't a deep enough tread or aggressive enough for me.
More the heavier duty, like the 8-10 ply tires, are what you really want to look for. It's that banding inside the tire that really makes a difference. The thickness of the rubber, how heavy duty the banding is inside that rubber, that just makes them tough. I've never had tires develop bulges on me.
Yeah,
a lot of guys do that when they run the winter tires up there because those tires just get so hot because they're so soft. And so they'll develop those bulges.
Yeah.
I would say if you're looking for, let's say you're new to Alaska and you're wanting like a good do everything tire, you almost can't beat those Duratrax.
No, they run amazing in the winter too.
I was just going to say they're great on dirt. They're great in mud. They're some people complain they're a little loud on the road, but like get over it. It's
nice.
But in the wintertime, they're I'm not going to say they're as good as Blizzaks, but they're dang near as good as Blizzaks.
They are great in the wintertime.
I have run those things years and years. And I mean, even on corners and stuff like that. I mean, they're a really phenomenal year-round tire.
Big fan of Duratrax.
I'm the opposite when it comes to swapping out tires of Dalton here.
Yeah.
I like to run them to the wires.
Nope.
Not quite. Usually one tire might be showing wire by the time I get them swapped out from the the in front being
That's why you're getting stuck in your driveway, man.
Stuck in my driveway.
I can't burn out in my driveway.
That's what you said earlier.
No, I was dead batteries.
Oh. No.
No, you said burn out in your driveway and then put your chains on.
I see what you guys are doing
bald
there.
Tires, man.
I see what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, just picking on you.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I have another set of tires for the one truck that I just haven't put on because I haven't been driving that truck.
Yeah.
And the truck I do drive has Toyo Open Countries.
Okay. This is not this is not a guideline for, must-haves for driving in Alaska.
Right.
This is like when you're going to go way out of town on a long road trip, whether it's for hunting or fishing or snow machining, you need to have the right kind of kit.
When you're in a
you
situation,
need to have good tires.
Yes. When you're in a situation that can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Out of town. That's the one more comment on the Toyo Open Countries. They're a great summer tire,
but they wear so fast.
They don't wear all that fast compared to. They don't wear any faster than the dirt tracks. If anything, I think they wear a little slower.
I've known a lot of guys that have those Toyo MTs, and they burn quick on the asphalt.
Not the MTs, the Open Countries.
Oh, yeah.
They're the more common one you see. They're not as aggressive tread.
Okay.
They are terrible in the snow.
Oh, really?
They are not great. They're not as bad as like a hard highway tire, like a work truck tire.
Yeah, yeah.
But they are not good.
Yeah.
But I've got them, and
those
a replace a set of those tires is $2,000. So I'm not gonna.
Bridgestone AT Revo 3s. I think those are Bridgestones.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's what I have on my pickup right now.
Mm-hmm.
And those are great in the wintertime. They are awesome, but they are just. They're probably 40% right now.
Yeah.
As soon as breakup happens, I'm buying a new set of summer tires. Well, and not just summer, but I'm going to get a set that I just leave on there. Just all terrain.
So I'm not going to pretend to remember all the model names and everything like that. But on my truck, I put a set last winter. I put a set of Nokias.
Yep.
Okay.
On my truck, because I was not wanting to spend a ton of money on new tires, but I knew I needed some. And
these were studded.
No, they're not studded. They're kind of like. They almost look like Duratrax, but not quite.
Okay.
A little bit less tread on them.
That's right. That's right.
But one thing I was going to point out, the reason I kind of gravitated towards those was a little bit of side tread goes a long way.
Yeah.
When you're looking at tires to get you out of sticky situations, that little bit of tread that kind of hangs over the edges and can bite on the side of ruts is going to be night and day difference.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned this is kind of like you said, this isn't like, must haves, but it's just after years and years, decades of experience driving in Alaska in this room right now. And it's something that really helps. So even if you're not necessarily going for Duratrax or you're not going for Nokias or you're not going for Toyos or whatever, finding something that has a little bit of side tread will go a long ways.
On my wife's pickup, we replaced the tires on that one last spring, I think. And I ended up going with a different brand. I wasn't able to find Duratrax in that size at that time. And I really wanted to change the tires on that truck. And the shop that I was buying them through had this set of Kelly. And they are an all-terrain. They might even be in the mud terrain class, but they're siped and they've got nice open tread pattern in them, and it's deep tread, very deep. So you get a lot of traction in there. It's somewhere for all that mud and snow to go, but it's a self-cleaning tread.
Yeah,
it doesn't cake in there, and that's how the Duratrax are as well. It's a self-cleaning. And so those I've been really impressed with it. Wintertime as well. Those tires are great.
Yeah.
Really, really impressed with those tires.
So the best all-around tire I've ever had was similar to the Duratrack. They were Kanati, Kanati, Trail Hogs. They look like a Duratrack. They come factory siped though, which most of the Duratracks don't.
The Duratracks come siped.
They come somewhat
at least
siped.
now they do.
Yeah.
I don't know about if they always
siped.
have.
I don't think they come as aggressively siped maybe as these ones are. Maybe that was the difference. But anyhow, these ones handled better than the Duratracks I've had in the winter. And they were actually bigger than the Duratracks I had on the same truck. Yeah. And they still handled better in the winter. They cleaned out mud. I mean, they were the nicest tire I ever had.
Yeah.
And they're hard to find up here.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it now. Like I should maybe. I've tried to order them, and there was one time Amazon was going to send them to me, and then I didn't order them, and then they said they weren't going to. But
anyway, just to kind of wrap up my thoughts on it, two more things that we didn't really hit on, but that are really important. When you're going to leave town on a long road trip, communicate with somebody else. Establish communication. If you are going to drive all up to Prudhoe Bay, well, there's cell phone service up there now. And there's cell phone service along the way in several places.
Mm-hmm.
Tell somebody in town that you're
Yeah.
leaving. Tell somebody when you expect to get there, and then have loose communication check-in times.
Yeah.
Say, all right, I should be at Coldfoot in however many hours. Give me a 2-hour buffer.
Yep.
Maybe I'm going to pull over and take a nap, or I'm going to pull over and have to, I don't know, take a lunch break or something halfway up there, whatever. Or maybe I'm going to get stuck. So give me a little bit of a buffer for minor setbacks. But if I don't check in within this time frame, then let the troopers know, or get in touch with somebody else.
Yeah.
Second best thing you can have, well, really the best thing is an in-reach.
Yeah. If
you're going to be in and out of cell service and you're stuck out there somewhere and you don't have cell service where you get stuck, or heaven forbid if you get in a wreck, or you hit a moose or something like that, having an in-reach to SOS and get some help and get the troopers dispatched out to your way can be it can be a lifesaver.
It can.
It really can. And it might feel like, I'm driving, it's not like I'm going out sheep hunting. But man, there's a lot of areas in the state that don't have cell service on the road system.
You can be hundreds of miles from civilization on the road system in Alaska.
A long ways from help.
Yeah.
So having an in-reach and establishing communication ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then basic survival gear. And, just use common sense.
Well, and point in case, that's what saved me on that one time I got stuck, is I didn't show up where I was supposed to.
Yeah.
And my buddies realized that.
Yeah.
Had they just gone to bed, or I hadn't even told anybody I was coming out that night, like, who knows?
Yeah.
It was cold that night.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, in InReach, there's two things that are going to be recurring.
Yeah. Yeah.
In any situation we're going to talk about here. And that's an InReach and a first aid kit.
Yes.
Those two things, no matter where you're at, what you're doing, from in your truck to on a wheeler, on a boat, on your feet,
in your backpack, yeah.
Anywhere, those two things are going to be always reoccurring on the list of things to be prepared.
Yeah.
Now, the first aid kits will be varying in size, obviously.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about trucks, if you're in your vehicle, you should have a very, very comprehensive first aid kit with you. You're not worried about weight.
Yeah.
You're hardly worried about bulk.
Yeah.
You can tuck it under the back seat somewhere, or, in the little, under the front seat in most of these vehicles now. But being prepared for just about anything that can go wrong, at least in the truck, is going to be paramount. If you break a leg, if you have a not a heart attack, but you're approaching a heart attack, right? You're starting to have some chest pains or something like that. If you can have like medication for that, if you're having sores, aches, if you're having, weird illnesses, if you're having, if you cut yourself really bad, having a bandage, I've talked before on the show about those, I don't know a different name for them, but they're called the Israeli bandage.
Yeah.
They're these huge bandages. And you can bandage up some stuff with those things.
Yeah.
And having, a few of those in your truck, just in case, right? Because what if you're out somewhere on your wheeler and somebody gets really hurt? You're able to bandage them up out there as best you can, but then you're getting back to the truck. If you're lucky enough to be able to get back to the truck, having more there is going to be huge as far as, surviving a
Tourniquet,
bad situation.
Yeah. Tourniquet, quick clot, some kind of a basic snap splint. That can go a long ways. And I mentioned it earlier, but a lot of folks hit moose.
Oh yeah.
And there's plenty of folks that hit moose out in the middle of nowhere, and your vehicle is out of commission. You ain't driving out. And there's a good chance that if that moose doesn't come through the windshield, you're still coming to a real sharp stop in a real big hurry.
Yeah.
And nowadays, if your airbags deploy correctly, that there are situations where they don't.
Yeah.
And your head might absolutely plaster the top of your steering wheel. You might bust your nose up something awful or split your forehead open. You need to have some basic bandages so that you can, be able to see to operate your inReach if you have blood running down your forehead.
Mm-hmm.
And this all sounds extreme until it happens to you.
Right.
You are not the exception.
Right.
This can happen to any given one of us on any given day.
Complacency is your enemy.
Yeah.
Thinking, oh, that happens to other people. That won't happen to me.
Yeah.
It's just a quick run up north.
Yeah.
It's a quick run, out to Moose Camp.
Yeah.
I've been there 100 times.
Yep. Until it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about dangers and safety in the truck.
Yeah.
There's a little foreshadowing. I think I'll take some pictures of my go kit, like all the stuff I take with me when I leave town, and do up a quick like what to take with you article maybe for the website.
Sure. Yeah.
Now I got to do it. It's in the recording.
I was gonna say you have a habit of putting deadlines on yourself.
I know. That's how you get stuff done, right?
Over promise, under deliver.
But no, a lot of the reason we've spent so much time on the vehicle aspects of it is because, there's a lot more you can have with you in your vehicle.
Yep.
And because it's a larger piece of equipment and you're traveling farther and there's more changes to your environment, there is a higher potential for certain dangers of a higher seriousness, I guess would be the word to use there.
Yeah.
But you get out to where you're going, and let's say you jump on a wheeler and you're heading out on a trail.
Mm-hmm.
How much of this is applicable to wheelers?
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of it.
Yeah.
Most of it is, yeah.
Yes. As far as like the first aid kit goes, obviously you're going to have to downsize a little bit, possibly.
I was going to say
but the basic idea of it, having communication and a first aid kit, sure.
Yep. Making sure your inReach is with you.
Yes.
Don't leave it at the truck.
On your person.
Yeah. Not in the truck.
Yeah.
Is a big one there. Like you said, you're going to have to downsize your first aid kit probably. Yeah. But you can still have more on the wheeler than you can in your backpack.
Yeah.
Comfortably. Yeah. And that's huge too. Especially if you're riding double with somebody or something like that.
Yeah.
Having enough to where if you both get goofed up, let's say it rolls on the side of a hill.
Yeah.
And now you're both sitting there with maybe one has a broken arm, one has a broken leg. You're just one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one situation. But
use one guy's arms and the other guy's legs, right?
Exactly. But having enough to really take care of a big situation is good there, and maybe that'll be a good thing to break down is maybe what is the appropriate size for each stage of this.
Yeah.
Toe strap translates too. From
toe strap does
from
recovery gear.
wheeler.
I mean, what made me think about that was I was just kind of running through my head what I'll have. I'll usually have some kind of toe chain, tire chains, toe strap, not carabiners, but the shackles for a vehicle, right? Shackles. First aid kit, sometimes two, one on each side. I'll have, like I said earlier, oil, fluids for my vehicle, the range of tools I talked about earlier. I'll have some kind of, food, drink, something stuffed up under a seat that can stay there a long time. I mean, all these things just
spam.
Fire extinguisher, road hazard triangles of some sort, or what's a lot more popular up here is the flares. I don't know. It's just this is something I thought about talking about earlier. I forgot to bring up.
Are we going back to trucks now?
Kind of.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. I think this is important enough to bring up though. Something for wintertime in Alaska on out of town is even if it's just a $50 handheld CB radio. Would be a major thing where if you're stuck, if you're stuck in a spot that's a road hazard, especially if you're in a smaller vehicle, semi might be blowing through drifts and not see you. Because that happens plenty of times.
Yeah.
Being able just to get on that thing every few minutes. Hey, there's channel 9. Channel 9 is supposed to be emergency channel. Channel 19 is most of the road channels, right? Get on that thing and just like, hey, four-wheeler stuck on top of 4-wheeler meaning vehicle. Anything that's not an 18-wheeler, just about, right? Anything that's not a semi. 4-wheeler stuck on top, Eagle Summit, right?
Yeah.
And also, you might be able to call back and let somebody know you're stuck there when they're parked 100 yards behind you because they decided not to try the drift you decided to try.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which I
on
might
the
be the guy that
roads,
decided to try the drift.
yeah,
I'm just that guy.
on the windy roads up here, 100 yards might be very
Anyway, sorry
out of sight.
Sorry to wrap that back to that. It was a thought I had earlier and I didn't write it down.
No, that's a good one. That is a good one. But for like your recovery kit for a wheeler,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people go out on wheelers without anything. They might have a winch and think that's okay.
It ain't.
It ain't.
Nope. It's a good way to get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of it pertains, you know, a lot of it's more useful if you have more than one wheeler out there with you.
Yeah.
You're riding
Yep.
with somebody, with a buddy or something like that. But a really interesting one is like you had mentioned, shackles.
Yeah.
You know, having something you can wrap around a part of your wheeler,
Yeah.
and then hook, like say, your buddy's winch to,
Yeah.
without putting tons of stress on the
Right.
axles or whatever you might have to hook to
Yes.
otherwise, right?
Yes.
You can actually wrap it. You know, it's like an 8-inch piece of fabric,
Yeah.
like a toe strap with a eyelet on either side,
Yep.
metal eyelet on either side, and you can just
Mm-hmm.
wrap that around any hunk of metal on that wheeler, and that's now a toe point, as long as it's stable. You know, obviously do your research into what part is.
Don't wrap it around your tie rods.
Don't wrap it around your tie
Axle,
rod or anything like that. But
Tie
if it's a
rods,
solid part of the
axles,
frame, you know, you're good to go.
Right.
Like,
A come along when you're by yourself.
come along's huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know,
time.
or you know, my dad, when he's out in his Argo, he takes a rope along with him because he can go 100 plus feet with that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of places we're riding, you know, sometimes you're a lot more than a few hundred feet from trees.
Yeah.
A ground anchor of some sort because
Right.
of that.
Yep. Tundra anchor.
You know, I carry usually come along some sort of ground anchor or tundra anchor, some sort of rope,
Mhm.
like 100 feet or so of it,
Yeah.
usually in lengths because I don't necessarily want it all out at the same time.
Yeah. In case you got to lasso a caribou.
Plus a 50, that too, yeah. Lasso it when it's dead so you can pull it out of the mud hole.
Yeah.
Because there is no pursuit of game on a motorized vehicle in Alaska.
Oh, right.
Straight from the rigs, folks. You heard it here. We do have fun on this show.
No. Anyway, but a toe strap, like you said, like a 15-foot
Mhm.
toe strap.
Yeah.
And it's really handy to have, like you mentioned, like a real short one, but it's also really handy to have like a 6-footer.
Oh yeah.
Because then you're not doubling back. It's about the right length to get a buddy out of a hole. It's the
Mhm.
right length to wrap around a tree. It works great, honestly, just to wrap around the frame too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. I have a 6-footer or so toe strap that stays in a quick slip knot around my rack and hangs down by my leg because I can just reach back, rip it up.
Yep.
We can get down to business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get me or the other guy pulled out of the hole. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, I've thought out my 4-wheeler kit a little bit. And I usually also, if I'm going, especially by myself, very far with a wheeler, I have some sort of toolkit.
Yeah. I was
absolutely.
just going
I
to mention
have-
that.
Yeah.
Tore down and cleaned out my fuel pump,
Mm-hmm.
fuel high flow fuel injection pump on my wheeler because I was having problems with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what you can do with a small amount of tools. Very small amount of tools.
Should have bought a Honda.
Yeah, because those guys never have problems.
No.
Never overheat.
No.
No, never.
He's saying that to me because I bought a brand new Foreman back in the day and it overheated on our first trip.
Oh
out.
no.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Awful.
It's about as bad as my Arctic cat that started to stall out every time I'd go downhill
that's what
first
you
time.
get
Oh,
Buying an
that
Arctic
was awful.
Yeah.
Was that the time that you were with me?
Mm-hmm.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, or you could buy a Suzuki and like a King Quad. Never have an issue with that.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Never gonna blow fuses.
Bulletproof machines,
Oh yeah,
man.
never. Yeah.
I love my King Quad. I don't know what you're talking about.
We're just pulling up stories from the old days because those are all instances that
You know
have
those
happened to
Kawasaki's
us.
though. Those things are great. They never have problems.
Yeah.
They just break apart.
Listen, any other wheeler would have broken it just as much, if not more, if I had ridden it like I ridden mine.
Yeah.
And you know that.
Yeah, it's in the rider. That's for sure. But yeah,
Go farther, stay longer.
There it is. There it is. The old punchline. Yeah. I think it's worth
'Cause you're
mentioning.
stuck, but
I think it's worth mentioning tires on wheelers too. And as far as we're saying wheelers, this goes for side by sides, all those basic off road ATV type of access. This all stays the same. Tow strap, recovery kit, rope along, tundra anchor.
Obviously, you'll be able to carry more on a side by side or Argo or something like that than you would on a
exactly. Possibly a little bit larger toolkit.
Right.
Maybe you bring that 1/2 inch impact if you got a side by side or an Argo. I mean, why not?
If I'm by myself, I usually bring it on my wheeler.
Yeah. Yeah. But tires are a big consideration. There's plenty of fellers up here that buy a brand new machine and take it out on stock tires and figure out in the first 10 minutes of their mud ride that ain't going to cut it.
Huh, I wonder who's done that in this room.
Me.
Hey, me too.
Really?
But guess what? I was a broke teenager that just bought a brand new four-wheeler. I just wanted to get out there and try it.
And hey, he had me to pull him out. So
I had him to pull me out.
Yeah, there you go.
But you get yourself a good set of ITP mud lights or ITP mud light 2s or like the
Mudzillas.
The Mudzillas.
I think that's the ones I have is the mud lights, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Those things are phenomenal.
The mud lights are the best low cost tire that just perform well. If you want to do a little more, the Mudzillas are the next step up. I really like them because they're not overly aggressive.
I'll tell you this, those mud lights, I have gone through loose rock. I've climbed boulders with it.
Yeah.
I've gone through swamp. I've gone through mud. I've gone 50 miles an hour on a paved surface. Like,
boy,
anything I throw at those tires, they handle. Yeah. So great option.
I think on my Grizzly, mine are the ITP 2s. I believe.
I like the 2s a little better. There's several levels of the mud lights and the ITPs. I have the Mudzillas, which might actually be ITP as well. I don't remember.
Yeah, maybe.
But I really like those as the next step up without going crazy into like the silverbacks.
Yeah.
Or the
silverbacks
2s.
are a bit much for me.
Especially for a hunting rig.
Yeah.
I like because mine, I can still do all the stuff you said.
Yeah.
I can still climb. As soon as you get those really big tires, climbing gets really risky.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say this too. There's been some spots I've gone into with buddies that have really aggressive tires on their wheelers. And I will go over swampy areas and you can't even really tell I was there. There might be a little bit of a rut or there might be, but I'll go over it and it'll kind of recover from me coming over the top of it.
Right.
They'll go through it and tear it to shreds. And then I have a hard time getting back.
Yeah. Because
those really aggressive tires just dug in so much and it whatever land bridge was there is no more.
Yeah.
And so that is a consideration too. I mean, you got to get back on the trail.
Yeah.
Typically.
Don't buy a one-trick pony set of tires for your off-road. But whether it's a four-wheeler or a side-by-side, don't buy a one-trick pony set of tires. Unless you're only going to be in the mud, then buy the most aggressive mud tires you can buy.
Right.
If you're only going to be above tree line up in the rocks, then buy a set of rip saws. But if you're going to be doing a little of this, little of that, then buy ITP mud lights or ITP mud light 2s or the Mudzillas. That way you can do whatever you want. It's good enough to get you through more mud than you probably want to go through.
Right.
And they're also, they also have a good enough grip and tight enough of a tread pattern to work in the rocks of the higher elevation country that you might be riding in. Don't buy a set of rip saws and then try to take them out into river country to run a bear bait somewhere.
Yeah.
It ain't going to pan out for you very well.
It's crazy. There's a guy I was with running those. He had a trailer that the back of the trailer with the little tongue came down. Maybe it was where he was parked like a foot to 16 inches off the ground, somewhere in there. Now, I could have put my wheeler on his trailer by pulling up, tapping the gas. I would have popped right up onto it. Yeah. He had to pull up to it. He and his brother getting off, picking up the front and hitting the gas with the throttle because he had the rip saws. I made fun of him the whole trip. Those tires. We were in the bottomlands. We were at
the place.
We were at that place where there was that ladder. We were down there.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
No, we weren't. We weren't down there. We were in another spot that was actually muddy.
that spot wasn't very muddy.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. No, we were at another
hole in
spot
there.
that wasn't really muddy, and
Yeah.
I think I got that big bumper on the front of mine. If you've got a rack or anything on the back of your wheeler, I'll just pull it behind you, push you out, and then drive through it.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that a lot. It feels really good.
Just rub it in. Rub it
Hey,
in.
you know what?
Yeah.
At this point, I'm still having trouble with my battery not charging, and I've replaced all the parts in that system. So
Time to buy a Yamaha.
Yeah. Or Suzuki.
I'm not against it. I like the way the Yamahas are designed. The newer ones, they've really put a lot of thought into it.
I love mine.
The way where the location of everything is on them.
Yeah.
But without going into debt,
Well, sure.
Yeah.
so at this point, it's just and it might be worth it at some point here, but right now it's not.
Yeah.
If I really can't get mine fixed and I just keep fighting with it, then it might happen. But at this point, I if I do that, I really want 2 running wheelers, not one.
Right.
Right.
And if I can get mine taken care of, hey, that's
There
the
you
only
go.
major issue it has right now. So,
Mhm.
which is a pretty big issue,
Yeah.
talking about batteries and not running out in the middle of nowhere and being stuck.
Well, kind of along the lines of batteries, let me ask you this. Does your Yamaha have a 12-volt charging port?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would say my King Quad does, and I know a lot of the newer wheelers do.
Yeah.
One thing to keep with you is a charge cable for electronics.
Oh, yeah.
Having some kind of a car charger for you so you can charge your phone, your InReach, whatever you might have out there with you.
I've got a 6-foot long iPhone cord.
Oh, I know you do.
Anywhere I go, I got a little white cord dangling up into my center console,
So-
and I've got
I
my
was gonna
iPhone in there.
I know you do, and I know I do.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people that don't.
You bet.
I have an opinion on that. I have had vehicles, including highway vehicles, die or not start because of running one too many cell phone charges without running the vehicle.
Well, you don't do it when it's not running.
Well,
And
yeah.
even on a
That's
wheeler
just common sense.
with a brand new battery in a good system, in a newer wheeler, you take that thing out, you get in a bad situation where you're having to winch a bunch and stuff. That little bit of juice you pulled off, your phone was pulling, can make the difference in that thing starting or not, or staying running even. Because with all these new wheelers are fuel injected, they require power from the battery to actively keep it running. I unplug my 12-volt port. I do not use it on my wheeler.
Well, we just got to cycle back to the fact you got to buy a Yamaha.
Well, personally, that is just like you guys have safety things you stick by.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a big one for me.
Yeah.
Because
I'll say this.
I have never had a problem.
I
with
have
that.
charged.
I run all my stuff I need
Everything
power
I
for
own.
otherwise off of battery banks and whatnot that I usually have with me anyway.
Sure. But
And-
I've had the same battery in the same 4-wheeler for years,
yeah,
and I have never had mine not start.
I was going to say, and I've been in situations where I've had to winch a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Uphill.
Like a lot.
I know. Yeah.
And you've been with me when we had a winch completely die on us.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
And
on
I think
Arctic
the
Cat.
wheeler still ran.
Yeah.
But
That was just a blown
I
winch.
have had a couple situations where a winch killed a battery, which it can do.
Mm-hmm.
It will
sure
draw
it could.
far more power than that wheeler is generating to charge that battery.
That's why you rev it up, too.
Well, yeah, but it still will draw more power than that thing is generating to charge
Yeah,
that battery. Those winches.
But if you use, a little bit of discretion, then you just don't do that.
Yeah, I know.
mean,
but
That's just,
when you get your wheeler buried enough, then
you just
at
got to be
some point-
patient and wait it out.
yeah, well,
I mean, I
you've never been stuck anywhere with a dead battery in a wheeler, have you?
no.
Well,
Yeah.
at some point one day,
He drives a Yamaha.
maybe you won't. Hopefully
There it
you
is
won't
again.
be. Hopefully you won't
That's because
be.
I'm buying a new battery for it before next spring.
Well, that's a good idea. That's a
Preventative-
wise idea.
Preventative,
Yeah.
I've gotten 4 or 5 years out of my one battery.
That's very realistic to do in a wheeler.
Mm.
Yeah,
But
I'm on my 3rd year with this one, I think. I'm about to replace it anyway.
yeah. I
But-
just get nervous about electronics.
You might.
It's just worth
But
it,
especially
you
a
know?
wheeler battery. They're
Yeah.
not that much.
What is it, like $150?
Not even.
Really?
Yeah.
depends on
Yeah.
the wheeler, depends on the battery.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah.
either way, it's cheap insurance if nothing else.
and,
Right.
And don't
Peace of mind.
go buy Super Start battery from O'Reilly's. Go buy the brand, name
Yamaha brand, yeah.
Yamaha battery.
Mm,
Yep.
yeah,
Most of the
yeah.
time, manufacturer batteries, especially for wheelers, are the best.
Yeah.
Go
I
down
would
to
agree with that.
Put on the Northern
if it's-
Power and find one.
If it's the one that's meant to go with that wheeler.
Yeah.
But-
There's a reason.
But yeah, having some way to keep your inReach alive, which don't get me wrong, inReaches will last a long time if you're not using it every couple of minutes like it's a cell phone.
Yeah. Which I don't.
No, you shouldn't be. But
try to use it as little as possible.
But yeah, making sure that if you do end up stuck out there for any extended period of time, that you have a way to keep it charged just in case.
Yep.
Whether that's with a battery bank or having using this charge port that comes with a lot of these wheelers these days is a good option.
Yeah.
Kind of along the same lines, if you end up being stuck out there for a while, one thing I really got in the habit of doing is making sure I basically have, you get all these preppers talking about their bug out bags, a 36-hour bug out bag or something like that. Basically have at least that on your wheeler if you're going out somewhere. Wheelers, you can get places in a matter of hours that, if you had to walk out, it's going to take you a long time.
Yeah.
And in some cases, let's say you get hurt or whatever, maybe not catastrophically hurt, but you just can't walk.
Yeah.
Even just a sprained ankle can really, really affect your ability to walk out of there.
Yeah.
Doesn't take much.
No.
So having a way to just keep yourself sustained, keep yourself alive for that amount of time, be it emergency little bivvy shelter of sorts, a little bit of extra food, something like that. Even if you're just going out for a day trip, bring a little bit of food, bring a camp stove, bring an emergency shelter, anything just in case your day trip turns into a multi-day trip. You are prepared.
Yeah,
and that's a really big thing. You can fit anything you'd need for that on a wheeler. And I would say that pretty much wraps up. Wheelers and majority of the safety issues you're going to run into when you're approaching one. As long as you can make sure you can get unstuck, make sure you're able to take care of yourself if you get hurt, make sure you're able to overnight if you get stuck and you can't get out.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you're using your wheeler to access areas that you're going to hike away from anyways, right? Or you have a camp set up or something of that nature where you're going to have either more supplies or you've got a lot of stuff with you anyways. So
I'd say make sure you can walk back to the truck or whatever. That sounds easy, but if you're broke down and you can't get out, you're stuck and you can't get out, being able to walk back to your vehicle, it sounds like an easy thing to do. We talked about having all this stuff, but just having it thrown in a garbage bag on the wheeler and not being able to easily carry it back to the truck. It's really easy to get on a wheeler and have everything with you on the wheeler, especially if you're planning on hunting and camping by your wheeler.
Yeah.
But the moment you have to walk out, everything changes.
Oh, you mean keeping it with a backpack or something like that.
Yeah, and having some stuff that's at least set up. So you may leave a lot of gear with the wheeler.
Sure.
But being able to take what you need.
Well, like your survival gear and whatnot.
You may not normally have a sling on your rifle on a wheeler. I know guys that do that. Personally, just keep a sling on your rifle. You don't want to leave that with your wheeler.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I know I know it sounds like a simple thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got 20 miles.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. You can, and it might only take you, I've gone on an easy trail. You can get there in a few hours. So,
or less.
Yeah. But anyway, let's take a quick break.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right, so we pretty much wrapped up all kinds of wheeled access.
Yeah.
What about non-wheeled access? What about boats.
Waterborne.
A lot of accidents can happen when you're on the water.
Yeah.
A lot of things can go wrong when you're navigating water systems. And you've probably spent most time on boats, I would say, between your various various endeavors. So why don't you take this one away to get it started?
Well, this is not just for one kind of boating either. There's a lot of different ways that people access, for fishing or just going out for a nice float trip or camping trip on 4th of July or hunting. And there's a lot of different kind of boating access throughout the state.
Might take a paddleboard out on the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what?
I don't know how much you're going to carry on a paddleboard.
Just for when you're on 4th of July trip, you might do that. And there's a lot of things you think about in those situations.
He's striking a personal chord there.
Oh, wow. I can't believe it struck it as strong as it has.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm still not over that. It's a story worth telling, folks. So here we are, and here we go.
I sense a story.
Here we are, and here we go. So 4th of July weekend, a couple of years ago, here I am, about ready to dip my toes in a deep mountain alpine lake to go lake trout fishing. My wife has this 2-person not stand up, but inflatable paddleboard. And in between us, sitting on the paddleboard, is a milk crate to hold all of my tackle box. And then I had a little, that little 10-liter black Sea Line roll top dry bag, inside of which were my truck keys, my cell phone, my wallet, and my handgun, because we had ridden a 4-wheeler into said alpine lake to access the area, and then we had actually inflated the paddleboard off of the little 12-volt charger. We had a little pump plugged into the 4-wheeler, charged, inflated the paddleboard, and then we were off on our way, like Jack Sparrow and his merry, merry men. Well, we got out probably 300 yards off. And I thought, man, this looks like a nice, good, deep spot in the lake to start fishing. Both of us were wearing life jackets. And I'm sitting there, threw out a line. I don't think I got 3 cranks on my line, and my butt started getting wet. And I thought, well, that's weird. And that, now, for reference sake, you're not really out of the water. You're pretty much sitting on the water.
Yeah.
Which I hate. And I had told my wife many, many times before that I didn't like that paddleboard, but she loved it. Past tense. So I looked down at my seat, and it was losing air in a hurry. I freaked. Because right in between my knees in that milk crate is my black dry bag full of valuable things. I mean, the truck keys, wallet, handgun, all this other, expensive stuff. And irreplaceable things for the time being.
Yeah.
You can't drive home. those are truck keys. And so, thankfully, there was another boat on the lake that had a motor on it. Somebody else on a side-by-side had drugged this little John boat all the way up to this lake. Goodness knows how. I think he had a roof rack. And so I started hollering for all I was worth, "We're sinking! We're signing help!" And meanwhile, I'm just paddling away. And I told my wife, I said, "Get it in gear, woman. We got to get to shore." And she said, "We have life jackets on." I said, "My dry bag doesn't." So yes, I know I could have just held on to the dry bag, but I didn't want to go through all this and risk losing my dry bag full of stuff.
Well, quick caveat: while all this is happening, me and the rest of us on this trip in like 3 or 4 kayaks are 400 or 500 yards from you, further from the shore, towards the other side of the shore.
Yeah.
So we hear you guys yelling, and we all start paddling your direction. I don't know why. You were closer to the shore when we were to you.
So I remember this because that boat had a couple of little kids in it. And in hindsight, my wife's sister was also along with Mariah and his wife. We thought that a little kid had gone in the water and that there was a situation there. And so they all were, hauling butt to get over towards us. And we were just trying to get to shore before we sunk.
Yeah.
And had a whole fiasco.
It was a whole.
So, thankfully the boat came over and pulled alongside. And the first thing I did was slunk my dry bag right in the boat. I said, all right, we're good. That's all I cared about. I didn't care if I got wet. It didn't bother me. We had life jackets on. Not a big deal. I just did not want to lose my dry bag. And we got to shore and my wife said, well, the water was kind of cold. It might have just deflated a little bit. And I said, not that much, sweetheart. We're throwing this thing in the garbage. Never have been back on that stupid thing since. Last year, you know what I brought? Canoe.
There you go.
It was the way to go,
style.
too.
Oh, that was
nice.
way
We
better.
brought a couple canoes. I don't like the kayaks really either myself.
No, I hate them. I love being in a canoe. Up off the water, see down in there. Oh, yeah. Way better experience. So, on that note, life jackets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've said this before on the show. The water kills more folks than anything else in the elements in Alaska every year.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're floating a river or running a jet boat on a river or out in the ocean, whether it's fishing or hunting or going from one place to the other, just for fun. A lot of folks in Alaska get themselves in trouble every year in the water.
Yep.
We read that story earlier on that last year about that group of tourists down on the Kenai area somewhere, and they ran into a windstorm. And like 7 people went in the water. Now, thankfully, they were all able to get to shore.
Chilkoot Lake.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Chilkoot Lake.
Yep.
But that's a perfect example. Had they not been wearing life jackets, man, you're going to lose some people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times with having a life jacket on in some of these silt heavy rivers and these fast flowing water, even if you have a life jacket on, a lot of times that's just so they can find the body.
Yeah.
And that's
unfortunately,
that is the sad reality of it.
Yeah.
You want to do everything you can to stay out of the water up here.
Well, and I think you talked about this aspect of it in that episode, but just the shock of hitting that water and how cold it is.
Yep.
And I think we even looked it up at that point. Isn't it like 26 times the amount of thermal disruption or thermal draw out of your body than air is, right?
Well,
water is.
Water works so good in heating systems, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, it's just going to zap all that heat out of your body. And then it's just going to, there's the sheer shock value of that. You're going to freeze up. You're not going to be able to, you're not going to be the superhero in a movie you think you're going to be in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. It will change your mind once you fall into a river like that. Even just like an alpine lake, obviously that there are some situations where there are some slower moving, shallow parts of a river that people swim in recreationally, or some ponds or a lake somewhere,
sloughs, things like that.
Yeah, and that's all well and good if you know that it's shallow enough that you can, at the end of the day, just stand up and walk out.
Right.
But even then, there are people that drown in the sloughs up here too.
That's true,
because it gets in over their head. They get cold. That they get to a cold spot. They dive down. They get cold. And then they inhale a bunch of water. And that happened just a few years ago in a slough not far out of town. Somebody just swimming just for fun, and they got cold, went hypothermic, and died in the summertime.
Yeah,
that wasn't that long ago, was it? It was just a few years ago. It felt like.
I think so. Yeah.
I suppose it could have been a little bit longer ago, but point being, the water's cold.
It is.
Even in June, July, August, if it's shallow, it's going to be warmer. But once you get down past that warm layer from the sunshine, that's still very cold water.
Most of the water in those rivers and stuff, even in the summertime, is barely above freezing. 35 degrees is usually about where it's at.
A lot of it's glacial fed. A lot of it's still getting fed from snow up in the alpine country. And so staying out of the water is your number one priority.
Yeah.
However, when you are on a waterborne vessel, wear a life jacket.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a question in your mind. It doesn't matter how good of a swimmer you are. You could fall over and smack your head on a driftwood log in a river that you don't see.
Yeah.
You hit something in the river, you get thrown, you get knocked unconscious. Well, now you can't swim, even if you're a good cold water swimmer. Let's just say that you could make it out.
Yeah.
Well, what if you get knocked out? You wreck the boat, you get smacked on the head on the way out, and now you're going to drown unconscious.
Yeah.
You're not even going to know what happened. So have a life jacket on. That is imperative for for water safety up here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they have a lot of different styles too
Yes.
that you can choose from.
Yes.
You know, and that's one thing I know I've heard a lot of complaints, and even myself have had complaints about is, you know, especially if it's a colder time of year, and let's say you're out on a boat and you've got a lot of gear on.
Yep.
You've got a lot of clothes on, and putting that life jacket on just makes everything so tight and just it's uncomfortable. You can't move your arms right. You know, there's other styles where, you know, you had mentioned at the beginning of this episode, the ones that have the beacon, right?
Yes.
The water activated beacon. They have other ones where they'll self-inflate when you get in the water too. And so those are much less bulky. They're much less, you know, restrictive on your movements. And so even if it's, if that's what it takes, getting one of those to be comfortable enough to wear one consistently.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's
exactly.
a lot better than not wearing one at all.
They got the full-on raincoats that have the
the float systems.
Yeah.
inflators in them, and it's just a raincoat until you go in the water. You pull the string and
Yep. Those are good options too.
Yeah. Yeah. So number one, have a PFD, personal flotation device.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have one.
Absolutely.
It's too much of a risk to not have it. And if you go in, that's the difference between getting out alive and getting out in a bag.
Yeah.
And that's just the harsh reality of it. So wear a float coat or a life jacket or a life vest of some sort. Second thing is, let's just talk about floating for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Patch kits. A lot of these rafts are pretty durable.
Yeah.
But, you know, you shoot your caribou, you shoot your moose, whatever it is, you shoot a bear and you accidentally, you know, put a claw through through a tube or a tine on an antler rack, whatever it might be, or you just, you know, bump into a sweeper the wrong way and catch a sharp stick or a sharp rock on the shore somewhere. Usually those river rocks are pretty well rounded, but every once in a while you bump into one, you look at it and you go, wow, that could actually pop a hole in the raft.
Oh yeah.
Have a patch kit and have glue that isn't 20 years old and hard. That is a big thing.
Yeah.
I was rafting with somebody not that long ago, nobody that, you know, anybody from here would recognize the name of, but a feller that was a pretty experienced rafter. And I was helping him set up the raft and patch kit in the bottom of the boat bag. And I looked at it and I just kind of picked it up to put it in the spot with the emergency kit. And I kind of just squeezed that little tube of glue in there and it was rock hard. That is useless.
Yeah.
Completely useless. We pop a hole in this thing and we're using Gorilla Glue and duct tape and hoping it's going to hold long enough to get us downriver to an extraction
shoving
point.
twigs and spit and gum and whatever you
Which
sucks.
Yeah. And if it's a big enough hole, then none of that's going to work.
Right.
And now you're waiting for an airdrop or a buddy with a boat that can get to you, which if you're that far out of town like we were, ain't nobody coming to get us.
Well, and that's a very excellent point for any of these things that we've talked about with safety gear, survival gear, any of that is don't buy it and forget about it until you need it.
Yeah.
You know, you had mentioned when we were talking about the tire chains, you know, getting used to them, trying them out, figuring out how to put them on. You know, one of the worst things you can do aside from buying a piece of survival gear and forgetting about it until you need it 20 years later is buying a piece and never actually learning how to use it. Whether that's a first aid kit or tire chains or a patch kit for your raft.
Right.
If you don't know how to patch a raft, you know, the time to figure it out is not when you're soaking wet and, you know, barely got half your gear out of the river.
Standing on a gravel bar in the middle of the Brooks Range going, now, how does this work? Do I put the glue on the patch or do I put the glue on the raft itself?
But this should be pre-season practice every year through your inventory. If your glue needs to be replaced, replace it. It's not that hard.
$5 tube of glue. There's no excuse.
I remember growing up, my dad had a bag, a blue nylon bag, roll top, not a dry bag, but and it wasn't that big, maybe 12 inches in diameter, 16 inches long. This fat little bag, and he called it his just-in-case bag. He had everything, medical, first aid. He had, you know, some pills and drugs. He knew that certain it doesn't happen to him but once every 10 years, but if he gets sick a certain way, he needs this, especially when he's in the middle of nowhere to survive, right?
Right.
So he had all that kind of stuff in there, and it was just like, he had patch kits for rafts, he had extra set of hand warmers, and he always was updating it and keeping it from being too bulky, but always just keeping what he thought what might be needed. If he was going snow machining, he had spark plugs. If he was going in a boat, he would try to have whatever, even if it was somebody else's boat, he'd have whatever he thought might be, he'd have a generic boat spark plug.
Yeah.
Because he'd been in those situations in somebody else's boat where they had none of that. And, and I think he's got some stories of being with the other people and even his own thing where something he had in that bag.
Yeah.
And it seems kind of crazy, but
until you use it.
Until you need it.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like, all the stuff I keep in, one of my trucks is just set up. I talked about all the stuff I keep in it, right?
Yeah.
And it seems, and some people might think it's a little extreme, but you know what? When I'm in that truck and somebody's in the ditch, when I'm in that truck and somebody needs help, I pretty much have what's needed to get the situation taken care of.
Yeah. On that note, aside from a patch kit, no basic mechanics on how to fix your boat motor before you go out in the field. If you're renting a boat from somebody, watch a YouTube video about what motor it is.
Yeah.
Don't just show up and expect that motor to be in fine working condition and then not have any problems the whole duration of the trip.
Yeah.
Many times over the years, I have used other people's boat motors, whether it be guiding or on personal hunts, and run into problems. Remington and I rode miles in the ocean, and thank goodness it was a calm night. But we rode hours into the dark after deer hunting one night in an inflatable raft with a little motor on it that died halfway out in the channel. We rode for hours. And
we rode like oars.
Yeah, like oars.
I think you told that story in episode 2, didn't you?
Possibly.
I believe you did.
Yeah. But that was a situation where we were awfully glad we had oars because there wasn't... Remy and I went through everything that it could have possibly been that we could fix in the field, and we couldn't come up with a fix for it. Couldn't figure it out.
Water in the fuel lines, anything like that.
Couldn't figure it out.
Yep.
And so we ended up, you know what? Let's just pull the motor out of the water and start rowing. Not going to do us any good to just sit out here and drift. But, a lot of people don't have oars in their little dinghy that go back and forth to shore, that they've got a little kicker motor on it. And it seems stupid to say, but have oars.
Yeah.
And if you're doing a float trip, have an extra one.
Yeah, absolutely.
People lose them all the time. And the last thing you want to have to do is navigate some technical water and be one oar short.
Right. So, or you can break one.
Yeah, you can snap one off. Yeah. So redundancy is going to be a common theme throughout this whole episode at this point.
Yeah.
But 2 is 1, 1 is none. So have an extra of that. But familiarity with your boat motor, know how to change a prop, know how to disassemble your jet foot on your boat motor if you're running the interior. If you suck up rocks and you can get to shore, that's a dangerous situation. But if you can get to shore, pull it up, and know how to take that apart. There are a lot of guys that are a lot more knowledgeable about boats, and especially in the interior than I am. That at some point, I've got one particular fella in mind that's had hundreds and hundreds of hours on the interior rivers that we're going to have on specifically to talk about boat safety and preventative maintenance, and perhaps a little segment of backcountry mechanic for boats.
There we go.
But yeah, there are a lot of things to consider with boats. And the hard part about boating is it's a lot harder to walk out. Because you ain't taking a trail.
No.
Right.
You're floating to a through point somewhere, to an extraction point.
Yeah.
Or you're jet boating way upriver somewhere, and then you're going to come back down. Or even worse, you're jet boating downriver.
Yeah.
And you got to come back
expecting
up.
to come back up. Yeah.
At least if you go upriver and you and your boat,
zonks out on you, you can maybe float your way back down with a set of oars and maybe get into shore in time at your extraction point and not float past it helplessly, screaming at the guys in the parking lot, "I'm dead in the water. Come get me." I've heard a few of those stories. That's not a good place to be, but at least you can float back by the dock.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot more to consider with safety, but again, the same thing goes. Have emergency preparations with you. I don't care if you're just running up the Tananoff for a quick day of fishing, you know, catching some of the pike and some of the side sloughs between Fairbanks and Nenana.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Bring stuff for overnight with you.
Exactly.
Don't go unprepared.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously a first aid kit goes unsaid. Other thing too is a depth finder.
Yeah.
And this is especially important for the interior for the jet boats being off of the sandbars, but it's very important on the coast as well. It's a very rocky coast that Alaska has. There's a lot of stuff that is hidden at high tide and looks massive at low tide. That at low tide, you'd run a boat through that channel and go, "Wow, that is some huge structure in here."
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever be able to hit that. Well, when the tide comes up and it gets hidden.
And it's barely covering that rock.
And it's barely covering the rock. And it's flat light.
Yeah.
And you're cruising along on step, not paying attention. Smash.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're stuck on top of it.
Stuck on top of it or thrown from the boat.
I was going to say.
And the boat stays there or stays in gear and runs off without you. So that's another thing too, is have your little red emergency shutoff attached to your wrist when you're running a boat.
Yeah.
Don't just sit there and think, well, it's not going to happen to me. Wrap it around your wrist, because if you get thrown from that boat and that boat keeps on going, you let me know how that turns out.
It's not going to be good.
It's not going to be good.
Yeah.
No. Because at least if you get thrown from the boat and you're wearing a life jacket, if the boat shuts off, then you can probably paddle your way back over to the boat, shivering cold, but you're going to make it as long as you didn't rip out the hole on the rock or something.
Yeah.
So depth finder, especially on the coast for jagged rocks like that is not a forgiving thing to do. If you're on an inflatable, man, you're in some real trouble.
Well, and even just having some sort of maps that show you and mark all those rocks, because all that coast has been run in sonar before, right?
Yep. Yeah.
It's all available.
I was going to mention that Navionics app that you got for deer hunting this year. I'm going to get that even for spring bear hunting. Dude, because
it's phenomenal.
I run a lot of inflatables for that. All of us do down there at bear camp. And that is going to be awesome, because it's not like we have a Garmin depth finder on an inflatable raft for bear hunting.
Right.
So I'm going to have that Navionics. I mean, you bet your bottom dollar.
Yeah.
$50 a year. Yeah. That's what I pay for Onyx. Why wouldn't I want maps for the water?
Yeah.
So having something like that is irreplaceable. And I can't believe I hadn't found that sooner. And to be honest with you, I felt like I should have had that a long time ago.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's another thing that's important to know what's under the water too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, that goes honestly just as important for the interior rivers as it is for the coastline.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just like there's rocks and stuff like that down there. You know, the shore of the rivers up here is not the only place that has trees and sweepers.
Oh yeah.
A lot of those fall into the water, you know, and then they'll get lodged in the base somewhere. And some of those are a half inch below the water level.
Yeah.
When you're boating on those rivers.
Yep.
And you can't see them until it's usually too late.
Just about
or you're
too late.
Really paying attention.
Yeah. Which you have to be switched on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, especially
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know, and a lot of people, you know, if they're new to this, you know, might not understand that there's trees sticking up at 30, 45 degree angles in that water that you can get hooked on pretty easily.
Yeah.
And I know several tales of people sinking boats doing that.
Yeah.
Puncturing inflatables and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Which kind of cycles back to, you know, like you having your survival gear with you.
Yeah.
Even if you're just making a quick run. But to go back to the coastline, and with that is, I remember when you were first bringing me down there to deer camp, and you made sure, you knew Mo and I knew what we were doing, but you still wanted to make sure and double check and be like, hey, just so you know, every day bring your camp gear. We say absolutely, always do, right? Because the tides in Alaska are insane.
Yeah.
We have 20 to 25 foot tides in some places. And, as you said, with the landscape and everything like that, it can look massively different.
Yeah.
I know we have a lot of people write into the show and talk about coming out for deer hunts and such as their DIY Alaska trip.
Yeah.
And maybe they're renting a little boat down there. So talk a little bit about tracking the tides and how to make sure you don't end up high centered in a boat.
Yeah. Or come back out after a day of hunting and find your boat high and dry.
Yeah.
Number one, get a tide book at a local store somewhere before you go out, and then figure out what region you're in. Don't look at the tides for Ketchikan if you're hunting Juneau,
right?
Or don't look at the tides for the Cook Inlet if you're hunting Yakutat. But make sure you've got the right area, and then just fold that tide book open to that time frame so that you're always going to be looking at the right chart.
Yeah.
Other thing is download the Tide app. That app is irreplaceable for me. That is awesome because you can look at not only what the high and low is and times of that, it also has a little line graph over the time of day, and you can click and slide on that little line that is the tide, and it'll tell you what level the tide is at what time you're holding on that line. So, give an example. When I get back to home base of deer camp every evening, I Indian anchor the boat. That's where you put the anchor on the bow of the boat, push it out with a lead line of the anchor back to shore, a long line, but that way the boat doesn't go dry. So I push it out as hard as I can, let it drift out, and then I yank that rope, drops the anchor down off the bow, and then I tie off the slack end of that line to shore to a secure object. That way, in case it yanks the anchor and wants to go out, it's still attached to shore somewhere. So, the advantage of the Tide app is you can look at right at that moment. Say it's 4:00 in the afternoon, and it is the tide level is 5 feet. Well, I know that I have to be up in the morning and out by, let's say, 7:30. So I can look at, okay, right now the water is at a 5-foot level. Over the night of a tide cycle, by 7:30 in the morning, let's just say it's going to be 6 feet of water. Well, okay, I know I'm good then. If the boat is floating now, then I'm going to have a foot more water in the morning. So I know I'm good. But if you look at that tide on that scale and say, well, it's 5 feet of water right now, but at 7:30 in the morning, I'm only going to have 3.5 feet of water. So now I know as the tide goes out that night, as I'm eating dinner 2 hours from now, I'm going to come back out here and push the boat out again and move it out farther so that it's in deeper water in the morning so that I'm not dry. You do the same thing when you're out hunting during the day. When you go in, say you go in the morning on an outgoing tide, don't let that boat go dry. If you've got, again, 5 feet of water, if you're going to be in the timber all day for the rest of that tide cycle and then on to the incoming tide in the afternoon, make sure that you've got enough water by dark to get that boat back in the water. Otherwise, push it way out there. If you have to, and I've done this several times, during the middle of the day, get out of the woods, come back out as the water's going out, and go push the boat out farther. I know it's not fun, and I know you feel like you're wasting your time, but the last thing you want to do is wait out a tide cycle after dark and just sit there twiddling your thumbs while your boat's sitting there dry on the rocks. Number one, it's bad for the boat. Number two, whoever you're renting that boat from is probably never going to rent you that boat again because you're just trashing their stuff. And then number three, well, Nobody likes to just sit in the boat that's not in the water.
Right.
So I'm on that Navionics app.
Yeah.
And I knew it had tide features. I hadn't really looked at them because you were using your stuff
Yeah.
while we were out there.
Yeah.
But it has the same thing, sliding bar.
Nice.
Even better, with that sliding bar,
Oh, it shows it on the shoreline.
it shows it and it actually changes the depth
No kidding.
in the app and on the map based on where you have it on the bar.
Wow.
So you
Oh,
can see
good.
it based on high tide, low tide.
Well,
That's a pretty nifty app.
another plus for Navionics there.
Yeah, no kidding.
So yeah, to just making sure that you've got a heads up on what's going on with the tide.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you are in an area where you've just got nothing but long, shallow shelves to work with, and it's going to be impossible for you to leave the boat for any amount of time, then get a kayak.
Yeah.
Anchor in the deep water, paddle into shore with a kayak.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you got your life jacket on in case the waves are going, because that could be a moisturizing event in the salt water that's unwelcomed. And at that point, you're just going to go back to camp and dry out anyway. Yeah, that's going to ruin your day.
Yeah.
But that's probably what I would say for down there with the tides is just
Mhm.
get some kind of an app on your phone that you can look at what the level is now, and you're not having to guess how much water is going to be there in 4 hours. You can look at how fast it's coming or going.
Right.
That is a big help to
Yeah.
be able to do that.
Yeah.
So.
And and that's not just for convenience sake.
No.
It's not just because you don't want to sit in the boat
Uh-huh.
and wait for the tide to come back. It's not just because you don't want to wake up and not be able to go hunt.
Yeah.
Because the boat's dry on land.
Yeah.
It's if something goes south
Yep.
and you need to get out of there
Yeah.
quickly.
Yep.
The last thing you want to do is go to your only means of transportation
Yeah.
and see that it's immobilized.
Yep. Your
So-
friend gets hurt or you get bit by a bear or something like that.
Yep.
Something goes wrong. You got to beat feet and get out of there, and you run out to the shore and the boat's dry.
Yep. Now you're in real trouble.
And it's going to be dry for another 7 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What now? Well,
Yeah.
now you're calling the coasties.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Somebody's getting a helicopter ride out of there, and it ain't going to be you if you ain't hurt.
Right.
You're going to watch your friend get taken into a warm helicopter, and you're going to have to sit there and wait for the tide to come back in.
Mhm.
I don't know. You might be able to ask him to leave you a sandwich or something, but yeah. Yeah, boating safety is a big thing. There's a lot of variables out there. A
Mhm.
lot of things can go wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to make it sound like it's doom and gloom. There's a ton of great hunting to be had on the water out there in Alaska, but you've got to have your wits about you all the time. You cannot afford to have a lapse in judgment. You can't do it.
Yep. You got to have the foresight to look at what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Not what's going to happen, sorry. What could happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You don't want to go into the situation thinking it's going to happen, but you need to be prepared for
And
it.
kind of on that note too, foresight, seeing what's about to happen, know how to read the weather.
Yeah.
If you're going out and the weather looks like it's about to change on the ocean, it changes like that.
Mhm.
It's incredibly fast. The wind changes direction. All of a sudden, boom, you go from 1.5 feet of chop to 4 foot white caps. That is a completely different ballgame.
Mhm.
Completely different realm. And if you are not experienced enough to handle that kind of water, or if you're in a watercraft that may or may not handle that kind of water very well, get off of it. Even if you can't get all the way back to camp, find a cove to duck into and just hang out. Wait it out. You might spend the night there, but it's better than sinking,
Right.
or
Mhm.
going belly up out there and having the Coast Guard come out and try to get you if they can get to you in time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of things can change fast on the water out there.
Yeah.
So read the sky, read the wind, watch the wind.
Well, and to tie that in with, a lot of the stuff we've talked about today is very similar to the next, right? If you're going in a boat, make sure you have parts, make sure you have tools, make sure you have gas, make sure you have survival kit. All of those things we've also talked about in greater detail previously in this episode, but it carries through into this.
Yeah.
Kind of along the lines of gas, and weather systems in the interior rivers, weather is still a big factor,
It is.
especially on some of these bigger rivers.
Yeah.
And when you're going, I can tell you from experience, going against the wind
Oh boy.
on a straight stretch of river,
Yeah.
when it's just blasting right in your face.
I have been in some rough, like ocean quality bad water on the Yukon River. It is awful, just terrible.
I think Tracy Lawrence said, "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst." In a song.
Was it Tracy Lawrence?
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I don't know.
Is that how he sang it too?
No, he sang it better, but
Yeah.
I think it was Tracy Lawrence.
I ain't never heard that.
I didn't know it was a song, but I've heard that saying.
Yeah,
I've heard it in a song. I just
I've heard that saying all my life. But.
All right, if you're listening out there and you recognize what I just tried to sing, or if you're offended by it, let us know.
Mariah, it's a no from me.
Like
I said, if you were offended by it, I understand. I was too.
That's funny. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers the general boating safety for now.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we'll come back to later in greater detail.
Well, and there's always more to talk about. There's always more specifics to your situation. This is, there's no blanket option for everything. But the point is, to try and anticipate what your situation is going to put yourself at risk for. Yeah. Are you on a river? Are you on a metal boat or an inflatable boat? Yeah. Are you on the coast or in the interior somewhere? Mm-hmm. Are you driving a paved road? Are you driving a dirt road? Yeah. Are you, hiking in or wheelering in? All these different things present individual risks that you can try to get ahead of.
Yeah.
I think you pointed it out earlier in the episode, but it's really, this is not trying to be a doom and gloom episode here.
No.
There's so many awesome opportunities in this state, and there's so many amazing things you can do and just have fun and have a great experience and tell awesome stories. And a lot of those awesome stories can be told after preventing something that would have turned it into an awful story.
Yeah.
And just being prepared, like having all of these things, the toolkit, the spare parts, first aid kit, survival gear to spend the night.
Yeah.
How much different is the story when you tell, a story about getting your wheeler stuck and man, I had to spend the night out there, but I had food, I had my little survival shelter. I was only planning on being out for like 4 hours, but ended up being out for almost 2 days.
Yeah.
Until I could get out of there. And but man, it wasn't that bad. I had all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I was able to reach out and, get an axle for my wheeler delivered or something like that, whatever might have broken. Yeah. But how different would that story be if you didn't have any of that?
Yeah.
If you didn't have an in-reach, if you didn't have a survival shelter, if you didn't have extra food.
Yeah.
You just went out there with nothing but a backpack and, nothing real substance in it.
Only the worst of the worst stories make the news headlines.
Yeah.
There are thousands of Alaskans every year that go through a miniature disaster on a hunting trip. And that doesn't make the news because they figured it out.
Yep.
They were prepared, or they used the buddy system. They used their inReach or their cell phone to call a friend. And by the way, if you've got a boat in the interior, pretty handy to have a friend with a boat too.
Yeah.
That's
it is
firsthand experience right
on
there.
On speed dial.
Yeah. A friend or a reliable connection to somebody that has a boat that is capable of getting anywhere that you might go.
Or a helicopter.
Right. Or a helicopter. Yeah. Yeah. The brown shirts have helicopters in the interior.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But having somebody else with a boat that can help come to recover you if you get into a bad situation is another big thing. And that really translates, whether we're talking about road safety and hunting out of a truck or driving a long distance on one of the roads up here, hunting off of a four-wheeler or an ATV of some sort, or boat activities. If you've got a connection with somebody back in town and say, look, this is where I'm going, this is how long I'm going to be gone, I'll check in at least this often. If I miss 2 check-ins, something went wrong.
Yep.
So have something like that set up, and that, man, you'd be surprised the difference in how fast help will get there if you miss 2 check-ins for a day or 2 versus you go missing for a week, but they don't know you're missing.
Allow me to add one more thing to the boating.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, kind of like you had said, if you're on a wheeler, make sure you can bring whatever you need out with you. if you happen to walk out, if you're able to walk out,
Yeah.
right? Make sure you don't use a dark colored dry bag to store your stuff if you're out on a boat.
Oh, it needs to be just like the Navy's camo, blue. In case somebody falls in the water, they can find them easier that way.
Exactly. Use high vis. Use something you'll be able to see.
Are you talking about my black dry bag from my paddleboard story? Yeah.
I'm not poking directly at you.
Thanks for that. No, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Because if you end up hitting a rock
or
a log in the water or anything happens where you're going to, that stuff, all your survival gear goes overboard.
Yep.
One, it's probably going away.
Yeah.
But two, if it doesn't, you want to be able to see it, you know?
Yeah.
So all of these really dark colored dry bags are great for when you're on land.
Yeah.
Not so great on the water.
I just got a dark green Kuyu dry bag.
It'll be great on land.
I'm sure it'll be in a boat at some point. But
I'm sure it will too.
Yeah.
It was a Christmas present.
Orange, yellow, and you know what? Tether your stuff to your boat.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, if you can. Yep.
In the ocean, that's a little bit less of a big deal because if that boat goes down,
you got bigger problems.
Tether
there's
it
a
all
lot
to your
more to think
waist.
about.
That way you can tow it all to land as you swim.
I didn't know you were thinking, man.
Well, you know, when it gets late and I've had a few too many Red Bulls, things really just start to blend together.
But on the interior in the rivers, tether your stuff to your boat.
Yeah.
That way, because if you're in the right kind of river, you know, that way, if your boat goes down and it's clear water and it's only, you know, I don't know, 6 to 10 feet deep, you can always tie yourself off to land, jump in, grab what you need, make a trip in and out, especially if you got more than one guy there to hold on to the end of your rope. You know,
and at the very least, you'll be in there to recover that boat at some point.
Yeah.
And you'll have your junk.
Yeah.
Even if a lot of it,
even if it's soaking wet. Yeah.
A waterlogged gun dried out, still a gun.
That's very true.
A waterlogged gun still in a river? Well,
still better than no gun.
No. But guys, we just wanted to help give you some tips and advice just from experiences we've had and things that we've seen where, you know, we want you guys to all have the best experience out there that you can. I want you to go out, be successful, come back with great stories, try to avoid, you know, unnecessary hardships out there. And so if you have, you know, we appreciate you listening. And, you know, if you have any questions about safety in the backcountry, feel free to reach out to us. We're always here to talk.
Yeah.
If you're going into a certain situation and maybe you're wondering, well, what could go wrong here?
Yeah.
Again, feel free to reach out. You know, we're here. This is what we do. This is, you know, kind of why we do it is to help, you know, prevent accidents out there, whether that's through presenting knowledge on how to hunt or knowledge how to be safe, knowledge how to do anything you need to do here.
It doesn't hurt to bounce your ideas off of somebody else and see if you're overlooking something.
Yep. Ignorance, you know, it's, you could say it's bliss in some sense, but, you know, it'll get you killed in Alaska.
Yeah.
So
this ain't the place to mess around.
Yeah. Make sure you're educated, you use the foresight, and you have the tools to tackle anything. And you're not guaranteed, but you have a very high chance of coming out with a great story and, you know, just a great experience. So
you can turn a minor skirmish into a funny story instead of having it to be a disaster.
So I was watching a video about having a wood stove in your teepee tent.
Yeah.
And I believe the way the guy put it, having a wood stove, was it can take a character building event and make it a real nice experience.
So I found that song.
Okay.
It's Up to Him by Tracy Lawrence.
It is Tracy Lawrence.
It is
Okay.
Tracy Lawrence.
Wow.
I thought sure it was.
All right.
Wow.
Well, now the listeners don't get to guess it. You just told them about it.
Well, they don't need to.
Name that song with Mariah Humphreys.
I'll play it for our outro, and
Hey, there we go.
Definitely not.
We'll have to look into the legality.
you can do like a few seconds and you're good.
There we go.
Yeah, like if you like 3-4 seconds, I think you're good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Again, if you have any questions, hit us up. We have the contact button on the website at thenorthernhunter.com. We have our socials. If you search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram, you can send us a direct message there. Again, if you'd like to help us reach more people and get this show out. Rating, a review, and a subscription goes a long way. That's really helps the algorithm push this show out to more people. And just be safe out there. We want everybody to have a great adventure, great time, great story. That way you can tell us all about it. So till next time, be safe, get out there, get after it, and good luck.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.